Chapter 1556. Her Royal Highness couldn't even think of a reason for the Night Watcher to reject Siege's proposal. He said that what he wanted to do was just to leave Sun City. At this time, Night Watcher Otto was indeed not out of the princess's expectation. He slowly put down the black long sword in his hand, looked at Siege, who called himself a god, and said indifferently, "Before I see the way out, I don't intend to cooperate with any party." The meaning was quite obvious. Siegiatu smiled slightly. He held the scales of good and evil in his hand and muttered something. Soon, the bricks on the wall of the last secret room began to fold and shrink one by one. It didn't look like a door. It simply looked like a gap, but it was covered with a layer of gray fog, making it look like something that wasn't safe. "This is the way out." Night Watcher Otto frowned. Obviously, he was full of distrust for such a strange gap. Sievidu smiled casually and said, "Human, I allow you to doubt, but you should be smarter and prove that this is the way out. You haven't used it, but it doesn't mean that no one here has used it to go to the outside world." Night Watcher Otto looked at the princess without saying anything, and at the same time, he quickly thought of several possibilities. This princess, who was now isolated and helpless, was very likely to give the opposite answer, but it was also very likely that she would give the correct answer, but he couldn't grasp the authenticity of it. She would want to rope him in and say that this gap was a trap. But she also knew that this gap was a trap, but in order to eliminate a potential enemy, she had to admit that this gap was the way out. Whether she admitted or denied, she would put herself in a difficult situation. From the beginning, Night Watcher didn't trust Siege's words, and now he couldn't even completely trust the princess's words. "What? Didn't you always want to leave here? Why are you hesitating?" Siege smiled slightly, but there was a hint of mockery in his eyes. In this regard, Night Watcher just sneered, but he waved at Ivan. Ivan suddenly shivered, and the cunning and witty Ivan immediately understood Night Watcher's intention and instinctively shivered. "This guy wants me to go scout. I'll die. Sir, I'm so loyal." Ibn instantly put on a sorrowful look. "You see, you didn't give me anything, but I followed you here. You can't treat me like this. Your conscience will definitely blame you. It's fine. I don't have a conscience." The Night Watcher shrugged and used some unknown technique to appear behind Ibn in a flash. His black long sword was placed on Ibn's neck silently. "Do you think this sword is sharp?" "Sharp, sharp." Ibn swallowed his saliva in horror. Night Watcher Otto leaned close to Ivan's back and said calmly, "Do you think it's convenient to cut off your head with this?" "Fong fong." "Convenient." Ibn's legs trembled even more violently. "Then you know what to do." Otto said calmly, "This is the way to the place beyond the desert. Haven't you always wanted to go to the place beyond the desert? Go. There's everything you want out there." Ibn's face turned pale. He looked at the sharp black blade on his neck, and a drop of cold sweat appeared on his forehead. Then he timidly walked forward to the gap in the white fog on the wall. At the same time, Night Watcher Otto quietly observed the princess's reaction. He realized that he couldn't see anything from the princess's reaction. No matter whether this tunnel was a trap or a real tunnel, she didn't show it on her face. This made Night Watcher Otto couldn't help but murmur, "What a scheming princess." At this time, Siegetto looked at this scene with interest. At the same time, he waved his hand. A cross suddenly flashed, and then directly pierced into the body of the falcon-headed pharaoh, firmly nailing it to the ground. Its body seemed to move a little because of the stimulation of the pain, but it soon stopped moving. The princess raised her eyebrows slightly, but her expression was still calm. On the other side, Yamalana was still unconscious. She lowered her head and sat still like a doll. In the final secret room, there were not many people, but many interesting things were happening. Time seemed to pass very slowly. Perhaps it was because Eben's script was too slow. But no matter how slow his pace was, when he was about to reach the gap in the wall, he suddenly stopped, turned around, kneeled on the ground, and begged in pain, "Sir, I can't do it. I really can't do it. I don't want to die. I beg you, I really don't want to die. Cut the crap. I'll chop off your head right now." Ao2O's voice instantly sank. Seeing that begging for mercy was not going to work, Ibn's eyes suddenly flashed with a hint of madness. Since that's the case, I'll find someone to help you find the way, mister. Ibn stood up and quickly ran to Yamalana, who was in a daze, and carried her up. After that, he rushed to the gap in the wall without saying anything. This action made the princess, who was watching from the side, slightly change her expression. As for Sigiato, he snorted and shouted, "Mortal, don't you dare!" Siegetu grabbed Ibn's neck with his hand. Seeing this, Night Watcher, Otto threw something at Siegetu and shouted, "Catch!" Humans or even gods had strange moments. For example, when they suddenly heard the word catch, Sigiato didn't manage to grab Ibn, but he caught the thing that Ao Tuaw threw at him. He subconsciously opened his hand, and his expression slightly changed. It was very hot, and the thing in his hand was a bomb. Explosives, the most lethal weapon that humans had ever mastered. Explosives in the field of human science were still far from finding the upper limit. Perhaps the power of an explosion could be infinitely powerful. Of course, to make it infinitely powerful, nature would need infinite materials. What Sigiato caught subconsciously obviously couldn't make it infinitely powerful, but who knew what kind of materials Ao Ta used to make this bomb? Boom! A loud noise. The last secret room started to shake, and a terrifying shockwave spread out with Sigiato as the center. The shockwave directly blew everyone away, and they all crashed into the wall. They suddenly felt dizzy, and they couldn't even walk steadily. They couldn't even hear anything, and even their vision was sometimes clear and sometimes blurry. In the haze, a figure could be seen lying on the ground at the location of the explosion. It was Siegetu, who was wearing the golden scale armor. He was lying on the ground, motionless. After a while, Ibn finally calmed down. He looked at Ao Ta and quickly said, "Mister, did you kill him? Did you guys plan this?" Another voice sounded. It was the princess who had just crawled up from the ground. From a moment, Ibn suddenly carried Yamalana and rushed to the exit to when Ao Ta suddenly threw the bomb. Everything happened in an instant. It was something that could only be done with a high level of cooperation. "I don't know." Ibn shrugged. "I only heard Sir's voice. When he was talking to me earlier, there were two different voices. The other voice prompted me to do so, so I had no choice but to do so. Otherwise, I might really die." Ventriloquism. The princess thought for a while and looked at the mysterious Night Watcher. She praised, "It seems like you have a lot of secrets. How did you know that you could use this method to find out if this exit is fake? Compared to you who can talk, I trust you who can be silent more." The Night Watcher suddenly said something. However, the princess knew that he was talking about Yamalana, who was unconscious at this moment. The princess bitterly smiled and then carefully approached Sigiato, who was lying on the ground. No one knew if the bomb really killed him. Maybe he just fainted under the protection of the golden scale armor. However, the Night Watcher stepped forward and blocked the princess's way with a black sword in his hand. "You want to take the scale armor, right?" The princess directly attacked, and the Night Watcher, Tor reacted quickly. After a few moves, the princess realized that she had been easily subdued by this mysterious man. It was not that this mysterious man was much stronger than her, but it was because of his terrifying skills. The princess frowned and said, "We don't know if he is dead or alive, and you are in such a hurry to have an internal conflict. We have never been in a cooperative relationship." The Night Watcher, said calmly, "I will take the scale armor, if you don't want to have an internal conflict with me now." The princess knew that she couldn't win, so she gritted her teeth and snorted, "Let go of me." The Night Watcher, Tuaw, shrugged and loosened his hand. The princess instantly stepped back and said expressionlessly, "Take the scale armor if you want it. Sorry for my rudeness." The Night Watcher nodded, and his expression became serious. He turned around and approached Sigiato. He stretched out the black sword to open Sigiato's arm and was ready to touch the scales of good and evil. However, at this moment, Sigiato's arm suddenly moved. The Night Watcher frowned and raised the black sword to stab Sigiato, eyes without saying anything. I am not. Sigiato weakly spat out a few words. Just as the black sword was about to pierce his eyes, the night watcher suddenly stopped, and the tip of the sword almost touched Sigiato's eyes. It was very dangerous. You are Sigiato? The night watcher, Ao, lowered his voice, but he didn't move the black sword away. Where's that guy just now? Seth is very weak, Sigiato said weakly. It's not easy for him to come out. It's just that his strength has increased little by little over the years. Sometimes it's hard for me to suppress him. The explosion just now made him consume a lot of power, so I was able to save my body. The night watcher didn't move, and he seemed to be thinking about the authenticity of the other party's words. Are you really the high priest? The princess walked forward. Do you have any way to prove it? I can't prove it. At this moment, he sighed and said, just like how you can't prove which one you are, Yamanlana or Claudia, even I don't know. How can you not know? The princess was furious. She looked at the unconscious other self who was sitting on the ground blankly. How can you not know? Sigiato smiled bitterly. Since I also became a material, it has never been me, but it is also me. It is the self that was influenced by Seth and seduced and hidden in the bottom of my heart. The princess looked at the night watcher subconsciously, and she found that the other party was also looking at her at this time. They both read the doubts in each other's eyes. I have been searching for the meaning of life, Sigiato said weakly but slowly. I can't remember which year it was. I saw famine, corpses floating on the Nile River, vultures standing on the floating corpses on the river, and the sky was gloomy as if it was telling something. Haven't you found it already? Night Watcher said calmly. It is here, in this city of the sun. He seemed to not hear it, and his voice became slower and slower. After I came here, this place was a barren land. Only the temple, only this thing standing in the sand. I don't know what this is. At that time, I didn't have enough knowledge to understand everything that existed here. I just found a scale in the temple, and on the scale, there were two different things. What are those things? The one who asked the question was not Ao Ta, nor the princess, nor the other one who was not in his right mind, but Ibn. He saw that the princess and Ao Tual were looking at him, so he immediately shrank his neck. Horus left eye, Sigiato said in a low voice, and Seth's. He didn't continue, and his voice stopped there. But Ibn, who was hung there, felt very uncomfortable, and he couldn't help but ask curiously, and Seth's what? It's his penis. The one who answered was Night Watcher. Oh, and he said calmly, according to legend, there was a battle between Horus and Seth that lasted as long as 80 years. In the battle, Horus pulled out one of Seth's testicles, and Seth dug out Horus' left eye. In the end, the battle ended with Horus' victory. Ibn couldn't help but open his mouth, and he looked at the extremely weak Sigiato with a strange expression. He didn't know about the high priest, Sigit, and the like, but he knew that this guy called himself a god. Well, this guy had one of his testicles pulled out by the sun god. So didn't that mean that this guy was a lone testicle warrior? Ouch. God, it's so King painful. Chapter 1557. Ibn subconsciously clamped his legs together. For some reason, when he looked at Sigiato again, there was a trace of sympathy in his eyes. But sympathy was sympathy. He quickly looked around and finally picked up a stone from the ground. Self-defense. And then, Otto shook his head at this moment. Obviously, there were more things to happen after this. He shouldn't stop the topic here. Sigiato shook his head and said with a look of regret, at first, I didn't know what was on the Libra's tray. My first reaction was to pick up the thing on the tray, the thing on the right. Now that I think about it, if I picked up the thing on the left first, perhaps Sun City would look different now. Otto frowned and said, the thing on the right is Seth's. The thing on the left is Horus's eye. You mean, whether it's the thing left by Seth or Horus's left eye, they all contain their own will? Yes. Sigiato nodded. Otto frowned again and said, then why did the left eye appear on the pharaoh? Sigiato grew silent for a moment. Then he slowly said, I At the very least, I should be another me. I wanted to replicate Horus' power. That was why I created the pharaoh of the kingdom and implanted this left eye into him. Otto suddenly sneered and said, I'm afraid it's not just that, right? The pharaoh of the kingdom fell in love with the previous saintess of the temple and then gave birth to the current princess. This is your purpose, right? The princess's eyes narrowed and met Siegetu's eyes at this time. She asked in a deep voice, Really? Siegetu looked at her and finally sighed. At first, I thought that I needed a complete artifact to contain the power of the Libra. But whether it's Seth or Horus, they're all incomplete. They're just weights on the Libra, not enough to become artifact. Not enough. From the beginning, all the living people in Sun City were puppets that you manipulated. Her Royal Highness laughed bitterly. Even I have been living in your hypocrisy all these years. The wisest princess in the kingdom. It sounds so ironic now. This is not ironic. Siegetu looked at her, and his voice became softer. Because your life is complete. Before this, Sun City has experienced many reincarnations. The people here died again and again under the invasion of the giant beasts, and then resurrected again and again. Everything started from the beginning, and only then did they select the materials in the final secret chamber. Only you were born in this last reincarnation. You were truly born in the city of the sun. You are the true son of the sun, the princess coldly snorted. But Otto said, You seem to be in a hurry to tell us the truth. Aren't you afraid that we will kill you now? Siegetu said indifferently, Perhaps it will come out again soon. Over the years, the amount of time I can stay awake has been decreasing, and the things I can leave behind are also decreasing. If possible, I hope to be able to rest in peace. I am too tired. After more than 600 years of wandering, I just want to find a place where I can sleep in peace. Immortality is not as beautiful as it seems. When you come back after enjoying the prosperity of the world, there is no one who can accompany you all the time. What's wrong with immortality? I think about it every day. The one who said this was Ibn. He muttered these words in a low voice, but it was quiet enough here, and his murmur could be easily heard. Otto, the night watchman, glanced at him expressionlessly, and Siegetu also glanced at him casually. Just take it that I'm tired of living. Siegetu smiled, but his expression was lonely and sad. Then he said self-deprecatingly, Perhaps, when the real death comes, I will naturally regret it. After all, this is the human heart. You have to act quickly. I feel that it will wake up soon, very soon. Mr. Otto's gaze tightened, and he gently raised the black knife in his hand. At this time, the princess hurriedly stepped forward. Wait. Where's my original body? Siegetu looked at the princess and couldn't help but ask, Do you want to live as Claudia or as Yamanlana? The princess said without hesitation, I'm the princess of the city of the sun. Siegetu looked at her deeply and then whispered, Underground, there is a secret room under here. Listen, there are 2 rooms inside. You can only open the one on the left. You absolutely cannot open the one on the right. This is my last advice to you, as a father, my princess. So, under Siegetu's guidance, Otto found the mechanism to open the secret room below, and he also successfully learned the way to leave the city of the sun from Siegetu. At this time, Siegetu slowly closed his eyes. He put the scale aside, then lay down and crossed his hands on his chest. Finally, please bring death to me. No need to hesitate. I think you don't have a second bomb, right? Otto directly raised his knife. If it was something else, he would obviously hesitate, but if it was just to kill a person, there was no need to hesitate. To eliminate the potential danger directly, there was no need to think more. Wait. But at this moment, the princess suddenly reached out and stopped Otto, the night watchman. Mr. Otto frowned. The princess said indifferently, Even if I want to end his life, I hope it is through my own hands, not you, a stranger. He stared at the princess's eyes until he saw the stubbornness in her eyes. Then he nodded, stepped back, and said, Hurry up. How to kill a person in the fastest way. I believe you don't need me to teach you, my brave princess. The princess took a deep breath. I will remember this moment. Although the situation forced me, I will remember you. Remember the guy who forced me to kill my adoptive father with my own hands. This humiliation will accompany my life forever, until I kill you. I just want to leave this place. Otto said indifferently. You are welcome to take revenge on me at any time. If this can be one of the motivations for your survival in the future, I will be happy to. The princess turned around angrily, slowly walked to Sieju's side, squatted down, and gently pressed the pistol against his forehead. She stroked his cheek, leaned close to him, and whispered, Finally, do you have any last words to me? Sieju didn't open his eyes. He was quietly waiting for death, as if he had nothing to worry about. At this moment, Her Royal Highness clenched her teeth and pulled the trigger. In the last secret room, the moment the loud gunshot rang out, Her Royal Highness abruptly stood up. With her back facing Otto and Ivan, a drop of tear silently fell down. Otto took 2 steps forward and glanced at Sieju. The bullet undoubtedly penetrated Sieju's forehead, and a finger-sized hole was slowly bleeding. After that, the princess looked at him expressionlessly. Then she slowly walked to the entrance of the secret chamber. Suddenly, she stopped, and then the loud gunshots sounded again. Ibn couldn't help but jump in fright. He saw that not far away, the unconscious and sluggish person actually fell to the ground at this moment. There was also a finger-sized hole on the right side of her forehead. Surprisingly, it was Her Highness who fired the shot, but she didn't even look at it. Before entering the secret underground room, she raised her hand and fired the shot. After that, she didn't even look at it and directly walked into the pitch-black tunnel. She even dared to kill herself. Ibn couldn't help sweating. Princess Yamanrana is really a ruthless person. Mr. Otto didn't say anything. He lifted the scales of good and evil again with the black knife. Then he walked to the corner of the last secret chamber according to Sieju's instructions. He groped on the wall and finally pressed something. A basin-sized groove suddenly appeared on the wall. The groove was in the shape of the scale. Mr. Otto glanced at the groove and suddenly turned around to look at Sieju, who was shot to death by the princess. He remained silent. Oh, sir, what are you waiting for? Ibn hurriedly came forward at this time. Why don't you open the passage? Otto didn't speak and ignored Ibn. After waiting for a while, he suddenly said, It didn't turn into sand. What did you say? Ibn couldn't help but be stunned. Mr. Otto said indifferently, I said this high priest hasn't turned into sand yet. It's him. Ibn's eyes widened. According to the experience along the way, the people here basically turned into sand soon after death. But Sieju's body was still there after being shot in the head. It didn't turn into sand, and it was still warm. Oh, sir, you're really a guy who is more cautious than a poisonous snake, Ibn said excitedly. Believe me, this is really a compliment to you. Mr. Otto glanced at this guy and then directly put the scale into the groove on the wall. But at this time, Ibn couldn't help but scream. Wait, sir. The princess didn't turn into sand. Otto, the night watcher, instantly stretched out his hand and wanted to pull the scale out of the groove. But he didn't expect that after the scale was stuck in the groove, it seemed to have taken root. Even if he used all his strength, he couldn't get it out. At the same time, in the last secret room, there was a slight tremor at this time. Mr. Otto couldn't help but slowly step back. He looked around the last secret room, watching the dust that began to fall from the wall, and suddenly shouted, Go! This place is going to collapse. With that, Mr. Otto dashed out of the door. He believed that Ibn would be able to keep up with him. Ibn had always been good at running for his life. As expected, after Ibn shivered, he immediately ran. But at this time, his foot was caught by something. He couldn't help but look back. At this moment, a hand grabbed his leg. In the last secret room, the passage leading to the underground secret room was longer than expected. The princess kept moving forward in the dark, but she still couldn't see the end. This was a spiral staircase leading to the bottom. She had never been to this place, even though she had gone to the outside world through the last secret room more than once. Her Royal Highness took a deep breath. Her eyes were actually lifeless at this moment. Her hands were hanging by her side. It was as if she was just walking forward subconsciously, but she didn't know where her destination was. She didn't know how far she had walked in the end. Maybe she had gone 10 meters, 20 meters, 30 meters, or even deeper. Suddenly, she heard some water. The princess couldn't help but remember that when she was a child, her mother once told her that the people of Sun City usually used water from the underground river. There was a water source underground, an underground river. This was something that the princess had always been very clear about, but she had never found a way to reach this underground river. At most, she just dug a well. Finally, the stairs were finished, and she came to a place that was not so dark. Deep in the ground, crystals with light blue luster were inlaid in the surrounding rocks. A river about 10 meters wide appeared in this underground world. What she was stepping on was moist soil that she had never seen in Sun City. The princess squatted down, dug up a piece of moist soil on the ground, put it in front of her, and gently smelled the soil. She had dreamed of covering the desert of the City of the Sun with this fertile soil, using the knowledge she had learned from the outside world. So, it has always been here. The princess smiled bitterly, stood up, scattered the soil, and walked forward. In front, she could vaguely see a hut built by the river. There were no 2 rooms like Siegedu said before his death. The princess couldn't help but frown and slowly walked toward the hut. The road was obviously not long. She soon arrived in front of the hut. The outside of the hut was actually surrounded by a fence, and there were some green plants in the yard. They were vegetable seedlings. It seemed that someone lived here. The princess couldn't help but frown. At this time, the wooden door of the hut slowly opened, and a girl was carrying a basket at this time, humming a song as she walked out. Her eyes met the princess. The divine weapon in the princess' hand fell to the ground at once. She looked at the girl carrying a basket in front of her, and her voice trembled. "Mother, Queen, the last secret chamber." Ever since Mr. Otto and Ibn escaped, the place began to collapse. But the collapse was not what Otto had imagined. Only the wall began to peel off. But even so, huge chunks of bricks were still falling down. The pharaoh of the kingdom was dying, and the blood that flowed out had dyed the ground red. Suddenly, the blood began to shrink little by little, and finally flowed into his body. Facing death, he suddenly opened his eyes. A young man in the palace guard uniform was standing in front of him. "Boss Luo, before your wish is fulfilled, please continue to gallop," Boss Luo said softly. "Eagles should soar in the sky, my majesty." At the same time, lying not far away, Siegedu, who was supposed to be dead, suddenly opened his eyes at this moment. His body began to mutate, just like the pharaoh of the kingdom before. His body began to crack, as if something broke out of this layer of skin. It was a huge creature with a jackal head and a human body. Chapter 1558. Hurry, hurry up. Ivan said in horror as he walked. He was even carrying a person on his back. The princess. No, it was Yamana who was shot by the princess. Why are you still carrying her? Otto, who was leading the way, couldn't help but ask with a frown. She's not dead. She's not dead yet. Ivan gasped and said, but it seems like she's about to die. She can't open her eyes, and she can only grab me with her hands. Otto glanced at Yamana's wound and shook his head. Even if she's not dead, she won't live for long. There's no medical condition here to save her. Put her down, or it will slow us down. I won't try. Ivan shook his head. If she really dies in the end, I'll put her down. Up to you. But even so, Otto still slowed down his pace. It was just that inside the miniature temple, the signs of collapse were getting more and more serious. If this continued, he didn't know if he could hold on until the moment of escape. Siegedu, even Siegedu, who had regained his original nature, seemed to be calculating something. He wanted to use his own death to urge Otto to put the scale into the groove. What was his ultimate goal? Otto couldn't figure out at all. At this moment, a huge rock fell from above, and it was about to hit him and Ivan. Otto quickly raised his black sword and planned to use the remaining chi in his body to break this huge rock. Unexpectedly, at the moment when he was about to attack, the huge rock suddenly shattered. It was caused by an external force. Night Watcher. Otto frowned and saw a huge curtain slowly falling down. On the curtain, there was a nervous girl wearing a golden armor and a red figure. Genie. Oh, long time no see, Otto. The red lamp god. It seems that this is your summoner. You seem to be in good spirits. Aota tilted his head slightly. What's going on? Ivan opened his eyes, wide out of habit. Ah, your highness. The little maid wearing the golden armor jumped down from the flying curtain. Your highness. Your highness, what's wrong with you? I'm Yalian, your highness. Your highness. Lord Lamp God. Facing Elaine's teary eyes, the red genie could only stare at Otto and say impatiently, Shut up. Women, I know what to do. As he said that, the flying curtain suddenly doubled in size and directly dragged Otto and Ibn into it. Facing the falling walls and stones, the red genie grabbed the two corners of the curtain and said, Sit tight. I need to speed up. Damn it. I don't know you anything. The little maid didn't care about this. At this time, she took Yamalana from Ibn's hands and hugged her tightly. Ibn's hands were empty. In the end, he could only hold the edge of the curtain and look down. He drooled from time to time. He was scared. Aotuos sat quietly. The dangerous falling rocks did not seem to bother him at all. He only smiled slightly and muttered, How nostalgic flying carpets. So, you must know what happened here, right? Of course, there was no red light in front of it to stop. The great genie would not be hit by falling rocks midway. The flying curtain finally escaped the miniature temple safely, stopping on the square outside the temple that had lost its effect and slowly landed. As soon as it landed, the red genie stared at Ao fiercely. Mr. Otto just said indifferently, We haven't seen each other for thousands of years. You just met me, and you're already talking to your old friend in this tone. It seems that the thousands of years of sleep have made your brain not very clear. I will turn you into a sheep, Otto. Without the permission of the summoner, Genie, you attacked a human without permission. Aren't you afraid of being burned to death by the flame of the magic lamp? Oh, my God, why did I tell you so much? You bastard. Ah, Genie, now is not the time to quarrel with this gentleman. Your Highness is dying. You have to save her. I told you to shut up, woman. I know, shut up. I know how to save them. The red genie's head suddenly swelled, and its mouth was about to swallow the little maid. Also, I'm not arguing with this bastard. I'm cursing this bastard. I haven't scolded this bastard for thousands of years. If I don't scold him now, I'll feel uncomfortable all over. Enough. Save them. Immediately. Immediately. The little maid in the golden armor suddenly stood up. Her voice was sharp. Her teary eyes were now filled with anger. I know. Ibn didn't know and didn't dare to ask. He thought that the red giant would suddenly do something evil, but he didn't expect the red giant to be scared. At this moment, the red genie came in front of Yamanlana, who was on the verge of death, and gently held her head with both hands. Its palms were slightly shining. Mr. Aotoa shook his head and muttered, He's still the same. He's scared when he sees a woman. After all these years, he hasn't improved at all. But he didn't want to disturb the red genie. At this moment, he turned around and looked at the outer wall of the miniature temple. He couldn't help but frown. As the outer wall peeled off, the other side of the miniature temple that was hidden seemed to be officially revealed at this time. The girl stood in front of the door and seemed to be surprised by the sudden visitor outside the house. The princess who successfully came here. The princess was stunned. This girl had the appearance of her late mother. Although she was young at that time, the princess always had a good memory, so she couldn't forget her mother's appearance. But the problem was she was too young. She was even younger than her mother in the princess memory. Maybe it was just a similar person, or maybe the princess thought of the Libra's ability to distinguish good from evil. Then this girl in front of her, was she? You are here? After the girl recovered from her shock, she smiled and placed the basket in the corridor outside the door. Then, she walked up to the princess and reached out her hand to hold the princess's. The princess instinctively took half a step back and frowned. My mother died 10 years ago, Who are you? The girl said softly. Siejiro asked you to come here, right? The princess nodded. Don't just stand there, come in. The girl smiled and then turned around and walked into the house. Her Royal Highness hesitated for a moment, but in the end, she gritted her teeth and followed the young girl into the house. This should be the most simple house the princess had ever seen. At least for now, that was indeed the case. Are you hungry? The girl sat in front of the princess, holding her blushes with both hands and blinking her eyes. She was very beautiful. You haven't answered my question. The princess asked expressionlessly. The girl said to herself, all these years, I have been watching Yamalana grow up. I used to imagine what I should say if Yamalana came to me. Now, it seems that I can say anything because I seem to have forgotten what I wanted to say before. Answer my question. The princess suddenly said in a deep voice, Who are you? Why are you here? And why do I look the same as your mother? The girl looked at the princess coldly and smiled. The good side or the ugly side? Her Highness's voice was even lower. You must be thinking that I should be the ugly side. The girl looked very satisfied. After all, your mother was killed by the pharaoh after she became a giant beast. How can a gentle person like your mother be ugly? Is it not? The princess sneered. Most of it is true, the girl said at this time, but there are obviously some cognitive errors. If I say that your mother is the ugly side because of the power of the scales, what are you going to do? You know everything? The princess couldn't help but frown. The girl suddenly said, Yamalana, do you know that it rarely rains in the desert? Every rain is a gift from the gods, especially when you can hold a rainbow in your hand. Who are you? The princess obviously lost all her patience. She slammed her hands on the wooden table and stood up angrily. Why are you hiding in the underground river of the palace? You and the high priest. You and Siejiro. What is the relationship between you? Come with me. The girl couldn't help but sigh slowly at this time. She looked at the princess with a reluctant look. Originally, I wanted to talk to you more. But before that, this uninvited gentleman. Don't you think that it is more polite to knock on the door before entering? When the princess heard this, she subconsciously looked behind her. Mister? She didn't remember who she came with. Was it Otto? That guy followed me and quietly came down? Sorry, I should have noticed this earlier. Because I was paying attention to the other side, I was a little fascinated for a while. As the apologetic voice rang out, a figure gradually appeared out of thin air in front of the princess. It was a black-haired young man wearing the uniform of a palace guard. The princess couldn't help but open her mouth in surprise. She didn't know why, but she seemed to have a special feeling of familiarity with this black-haired young man, but she couldn't remember where she had seen this young man. Although a strange feeling rose in her heart, she was still the pride of the City of the Sun who had been on the battlefield for many years. Her Royal Highness almost immediately did everything that should be on guard. Who are you? Yamalana, don't be rude. The girl suddenly whispered at this time. This gentleman has no evil intentions. He is just a visitor here. Or he may want to do some small business. Am I right? Yes, ma'am. The young guard said politely. Actually, I didn't want to disturb here so soon. After all, I haven't really come here yet, just... With that, the young guard suddenly glanced at the princess next to him and said with a smile, It's just that your highness told me before that she hoped that I could use my own eyes to judge the one that doesn't have me in the memory. The girl smiled slightly and said, Even if you want to judge it yourself, it seems that you are too greedy. Didn't the battle between Seth and Horus satisfy you? The young guard said apologetically, This little bit of greed is already one of the few things I was born with. I hope that it can be maintained, at least for now. So, I have tried my best to be careful and not let myself get involved too much. Carefully, for fear of destroying the original way things should be. Unfortunately, due to some rules, I will inevitably come into contact with some things. This is much more humble than the previous one. The girl shook her head. It doesn't matter. Since you are here, then let it be. Anyway, there is probably no place in this world that can stop your invasion. Invasion is really... The young guard shook his head gently. It's a description that I can't refute. The girl just snorted and then didn't continue to pursue the verbal attack. She seemed to have a sense of victory in her eyes, but it seemed to be just that, because if she went deeper, it seemed that it was not a territory that she could go deeper into. Even a verbal victory now was probably because the other party's temper was good enough. Most of the conversation between the young girl and the young guard seemed to be in riddles, which made the princess, who was listening on the side, puzzled. Only when the two of them stopped talking did the princess coldly snort. She had a feeling of being an outsider, which made it difficult for her, who had always been strong and competitive, to bear the feeling of not being able to control the situation. So she took a deep breath, pointed the pistol at the roof, and pulled the trigger directly. Bang! A loud gunshot sounded in the room, but the two people in the room didn't feel frightened because of it. It was like two people who were talking in a room and suddenly heard a knock on the door. It just stopped abruptly. So the girl looked at the young guard with an apologetic look, looked at Boss Luo, and said with a smile, "I'm sorry, my daughter has been a bit restless since she was young." Facing the two people who were fearless, the princess couldn't help but feel angry. So angry. Chapter 1559. It was a magical scene for Elaine and Eben. They saw a small metal bullet slowly emerge from the left side of Yamanla's forehead and finally fall to the ground. The wound was healing little by little. Soon, the wound on her forehead completely disappeared, and the skin here was still intact. This woman is so lucky. If the hidden weapon was slightly off target, she definitely wouldn't be able to survive until now. The red genie couldn't help but mutter at this time. It's as if there is some kind of power protecting her. The genie's voice was very low, and no one could hear it. Everyone's attention was actually attracted by Yamanla, who was about to recover. At this time, Yamanla even slowly opened her eyes at the moment when the wound healed. "Great! Your Highness, you are fine." "Yeah, Elaine? Why are you here?" After Yamanla woke up, she was stunned at first, and then looked around in confusion. She remembered that she was facing the high priest. Yamanla suddenly got up and looked around as if she was looking for something. The pharaoh of the kingdom, or rather, the pharaoh of the kingdom with an eagle head and a human body, who was cultivated by Horus's left eye. "The guy you want to find is up there." "The night watcher," Otto suddenly said. Yamanla looked up and saw two lights, one red and one blue, were fighting with each other in the sky. It was obviously a very dangerous life and death struggle. "Your Highness, the invading giant beasts outside the city have all been eliminated. You were right. The magic lamp you gave me is really useful. This genie is very powerful," the little maid quickly said at this time. But Yamanla couldn't be too enthusiastic because she knew that the person who was with Elaine before this was not her, but another person. But no matter who it was, they didn't miss the memory of the little maid Elaine. The memory was the same, the feeling was the same, and some of the feelings were also the same. Yamanla reached out and patted the little maid's head, then reached out and touched the dust on her face and said softly, "Thank you for your hard work along the way. I thank you on behalf of the people of Sun City, and of course this genie." He. She smiled shyly. Yamanlana glanced at the red lamp god whose body was half smoke, and her eyes flashed. The red lamp god said directly, "Woman, she is my summoner. I won't do anything for you. You don't have the qualifications." "Genie, although he doesn't look like a blue genie." Yamanlana shook her head. "The world is so big, and there are so many strange things. I don't know if it was right or wrong to bring you here." The red genie snorted. "You were the one who brought me out of the secret chamber because of your greed." Yamanlana mocked herself. "Yeah, it's me. Maybe it's me. Maybe it's not me. Who can say for sure? Some things. The other, you went to a certain place below the final secret room." Otto suddenly said, "We saw that Siejidu mentioned a place before he died. He said that we could find the answer there." Yamanlana didn't ask why Otto reminded her of this, and she didn't even ask about Otto's identity. She just said in a low voice, "What about him? If I'm not wrong." Otto looked up at the red and blue figures fighting in the sky. The one who was fighting with Pharaoh should be him. But why did he turn into a jackal head and a human body? I haven't figured it out yet. "Seth," Yamanlana murmured to herself. This is the image of Seth, the old enemy of Sun City, the Lord of the Desert. Suddenly, Yamanlana looked at Mr. Otto from the Night Watchman. Is there any way to help Pharaoh win this war? This is not a place that mortals can touch. Otto, the Night Watcher, shook his head and pointed at the red genie, saying, but it should be able to. Theoretically, this guy is also half a god. Bullsh asterisk T. This genie is a real god. The red genie glared at him. The little maid didn't know what was going on, but she knew that the princess wanted the red figure to win. This was easy. She walked to the side of the red lamp god, grabbed its wrist, and cried pitifully, Mr. Lamp God, I'm begging you, can you help me? I still have 2 wishes. Don't. The red lamp god hurriedly covered the mouth of the little maid, Elaine. This is the first one. The first one is an additional item. Don't make a second one. After saying that, the red lamp god pressed its hands down and flames spurted out from its palms. Then it rushed up, facing the red and blue figures in the battle. The red lamp god was instinctively afraid. But for some reason, even though it was fearful, in its eyes the so-called Sith and Horus, represented by the red and blue lights, were weak no matter how it looked at it. They were so weak, it was reasonable to say that it could destroy them in minutes. The key was that the aura that leaked out always made it feel like its legs were weak. Strange, although these 2 auras are there, they're not the most dangerous one. Strange. Thinking about it, it had already rushed into the entangled red and blue shadows, and without thinking, it threw a punch. The power of the punch directly knocked one of them down, and it fell heavily into the square. The red genie puffed on its fist and looked down with a smug look on its face. Mr. Lamp God, now you know how powerful this lamp god is. You hit the wrong person. Not this one. The little maid closed her eyes, clenched her fists, and cried loudly. The red lamp god was stunned and looked up at the sky. In the square, Mr. Otto shook his head and sighed. He had a look of shame on his face. However, the red genie acted as if nothing had happened. With a punch, the creature in the blue light fell to the ground. Yamanlana could not care less about this unreliable genie. She quickly ran towards the direction where the SBHYNX cat fell. However, Otto, who was behind her, suddenly shouted at her to stop. Otto said indifferently, compared to this, aren't you worried about what happened in the last secret room? The other one shot you, without hesitation, before going down. At that time, I would do the same if I were him. Yamanlana didn't look back and said indifferently, besides, compared to this, I am more concerned about my father. Otto couldn't help but think. Meanwhile, in the distance, the red genie had picked up Siegetu, who had fallen to the ground. Judging from his situation, he was temporarily immobilized by the blast, but he did not seem to have suffered any serious injuries. Siegetu was the image of the Lord of the Desert, Seth, and he was also mutated. At the same time, in the last secret room, the dead body of Siegetu didn't turn into sand, which meant that this Siegetu was the real pharaoh. Connecting these 2 things, could it be concluded that the pharaoh who mutated into an eagle head and a human body was also the real pharaoh? There was no division between the good and evil sides. He always appeared as the real pharaoh and ruled Sun City as the pharaoh. Or did the good and evil sides of the pharaoh go somewhere else? The red lamp god threw the creature with a jackal head and a human body directly to the ground. What are you going to do with this thing? Looking at the dying Siegetu, Mr. Ao suddenly said, do you have any way to help it regain its original consciousness? The red lamp god was stunned and said subconsciously, I feel that his original consciousness is suppressed by something. If he wants to recover, why should I help you? Because you are the omnipotent lamp god. Mr. Otto blinked and said, get out of my way. My summoner is not you. The red lamp god snorted and floated in the air, resting on his arms leisurely. This little girl seems to be the type who can make a wish easily. Mr. Otto said indifferently. After all, they seem to have a very complicated relationship with the princess. I think if there is a way to make them recover their consciousness, well, I mean, with this little girl's loyalty, she probably won't mind making a wish. The red lamp god subconsciously looked at the little maid Elaine and found that she nodded. Why did you nod? Don't you have a mind of your own? I see. The red lamp god waved his hand impatiently and flew directly to Jadu, who was lying on the ground. He reached out and grabbed his feet, lifting him up. What should he do after lifting him up? Of course, he swung him and smashed him on the ground. Lamp god. The little maid Elaine could not help but call out timidly. This is the fastest way to wake him up. The red lamp god snorted and said, I won't waste any magic power in this place. He continued to smash the ground. But this is too. The little maid Elaine opened her mouth and stopped. Mr. Otto said indifferently, Let it be. Physical therapy is sometimes good if it really works. Of course, you should think about how to persuade the princess if it really works. Her Highness, she will scold me to death, Mr. Otto shrugged. He had already given his suggestion. He turned his attention to the thing that was exposed after the wall of the miniature temple peeled off. After the outer wall of the miniature temple was peeled off, it was a huge statue. Mr. Otto could not help but whisper, the goddess of truth and justice. The feather on the scale? What is this? Despite the anger in her heart, Her Royal Highness knew that there was no way for her to vent it out. She suddenly had a strange feeling. She felt like this was not the first time she had felt this feeling from this guy in the Royal Guard uniform. This made her very confused. At the same time, she was also confused about another thing. That was what the girl said just now. This girl actually called herself her daughter. You are Mother's dividing face? Her Royal Highness asked coldly. This was the most reasonable explanation she could think of. Based on what she knew so far, the Royal Highness could not help but laugh. Yamarana, you can regard me as your mother. The girl smiled. But my situation is different for what you think. What do you mean? The princess could not help but frown deeply. The girl did not speak, just turned around and walked into the room. She indicated that the princess could follow her in. The princess subconsciously glanced at the mysterious young guard and became more alert. Madam, please go first. The young guard, Boss Luo, stepped aside and bowed. Don't worry, Your Highness. I will protect you when necessary. Who are you? Just a person who wants to see things to the end. The princess pondered for a moment, then turned around and went to the place where the girl went. It was not far, just a few steps away. There was a passage on the floor of the room inside the small house. It seemed to be the way to the cellar. The princess looked out and could easily see the bottom of it. She thought for a moment, and then turned over and fell into the cellar. It was not very spacious, on the contrary. The passage was unusually narrow. She could vaguely see a figure at the exit. She was already waiting at the exit. It was the mysterious girl in the underground. The princess walked closer while being alert. The girl's voice slowly sounded in the passage. Many years ago, there was also a man who came here. He was like you, carefully passing through this place. You mean the high priest? Her Royal Highness paused. The Libra, was it found here? The girl did not answer the question, and her voice became calmer. This man was so thin and weak, like a walking skeleton. It's hard to imagine what kind of hunger could make his body so thin and weak, and it's also hard to believe what kind of faith could make him come all the way here. But at the same time, this man's eyes revealed confusion all the time. The princess kept looking at the girl, and finally walked past her, and then walked out the passage. What appeared in front of her was a tomb. There were no murals, no statues or decorations. There was only a coffin placed there. The girl's voice sounded again. Finally, the man walked through the long passage and came to this tomb. He seemed to have found the thing that he had been searching for all this time. Her Royal Highness turned around abruptly. The young guard had already appeared behind her. Who's in the coffin? Boss Luo asked curiously. The girl blinked her eyes and said rather playfully, Guess. Boss Luo shook his head. I'm afraid I can't. I'm afraid I'll guess wrong. And I'm more afraid that things will be like this if I guess right. If you want, please tell me the answer. The girl smiled and said, I know a guy. If it's him, He'll probably open the coffin without any explanation or use his omniscient ability to know everything at the first moment. Then, he'll grasp everything in his hands. Finally, he'll let things develop according to his wishes. Boss Luo suddenly asked, "Do you want me to become like this?" "No." The girl shook her head and then said, "In fact, it's good, very good." Click, click, click. While the girl and Boss Luo were talking, the princess was not idle. Anyway, she had to accept that these two people could easily ignore her. Since she was ignored, she would naturally ignore these two people according to her temperament. The sound was the sound that the princess made when she pushed open the coffin. Chapter 1560. Along with the sound of the coffin opening, the girl and Boss Luo looked at the princess almost at the same time. The girl's eyes seemed to have a hint of helplessness, probably because the princess took the initiative at this time. Boss Luo felt more interesting. If possible, he hoped that everyone he met could treat him as an equal. "What is this?" It was not just a simple question, but there was a hint of fear in the question. She was afraid of the thing in the coffin. The princess suddenly raised her head and looked at the mysterious girl, dried corpse. Hearing the word mummy, Boss Luo, who had been curious for the past year, suddenly became interested. His pace seemed to be a little faster. He came to the front of the coffin and looked down. In this huge coffin, there was a withered brown corpse lying at this time. It was indeed a dried corpse, but it was not the kind of mummy that was commonly seen in the world. The hands and feet of the corpse in the coffin were firmly nailed to the lid of the coffin. It was unknown how many years had passed, but these nails were still as bright as new. The corpse's mouth was open, and its face was even distorted. It was imaginable how much pain it had suffered before it died. It might have been nailed into the coffin while it was still alive. This was an unimaginable horror. Because of the faintly visible face on the dried corpse, that painful and distorted face, it was as if one could see its fear, anger, and resentment from thousands of years ago. Even a strong person like the princess couldn't help but show a hint of surprise at this time. Of course, it is a dried corpse. At this time, the girl suddenly sat on the edge of the coffin, looked down, and said softly at the same time, "Yamarana, with your knowledge, can't you recognize that this is a dried corpse?" "Of course I know that this is a dried corpse." The princess said coldly at this time, "I am asking you, whose dried corpse is this?" The girl raised her head, and a trace of cunning flashed in her eyes. "Yamanalana, you know that the Libra can divide the good and evil sides. Then, do you know what will happen to the good side and the evil side when the Libra divides the good side and the evil side of the Libra if the body dies? This is the body of my mother." The princess suddenly took a step forward, and her eyes were cold as if she was going to devour someone. "Guess." The girl blinked. "If you can guess correctly, I will tell you. By the way, the so-called artifact in your hand is useless to me. This kind of toy can be used to deal with ordinary people." Her Royal Highness felt like she was going crazy. She thought that she had seen everything, but things were unraveled layer by layer and revealed layer by layer, as if there was no end. Everything that happened today seemed to be more than what she had experienced in her life. "What do you want?" The princess took a deep breath at this time. "Why did you bring me here?" The girl shook her head slightly, then looked at Boss Luo next to the coffin and suddenly said, "The story just now. Do you still want to listen to it?" "Of course." Boss Luo didn't hesitate at all. That kind of certainty without any scruples and hesitation somehow made the princess feel envious at this time. The girl was still sitting on the edge of the coffin, and her feet were gently swinging a long time ago. Well, is this the beginning of a short story told by a mother lying on her daughter's bed? She seemed to have a lively personality. Stories always start like this. Boss Luo smiled. "I personally like this kind of beginning." The girl asked curiously, "Why?" Boss Luo said casually, "This way, I will think that there is an ending to this story." "Strange guy." The girl shook her head. "Well, how should I say it? A long time ago, the sun god Ra of the 9 pillar gods gave birth to 2 daughters, the goddess of truth and the goddess of justice. The story just started, and before 2 sentences were said, the princess couldn't help but frown. The goddess of truth and justice is Matt. The sun god Ra only gave birth to one daughter. What kind of story is this? The young girl looked at the princess and took out a small wooden mallet from who knows where. At this moment, she directly hit the princess on the forehead. Even with the princess's martial arts skills, she was still unable to dodge and was hit in the head by the wooden mallet. You can't interrupt when you're listening to a story. The girl stood up with her hands on her waist and bent over from the edge of the coffin to look at the princess, who looked like a lioness. Look at this gentleman. How polite. You should learn from him. The princess couldn't help but frown at the tone of a mother teaching her daughter. But she knew that she couldn't deal with this mysterious girl, so she could only suppress her anger and think of countermeasures. Humph, the girl snorted. Don't think that you know everything just because you have studied in the outside world for a few years. Do you know how many times the outside world's history has been distorted? While speaking, the girl glanced at Boss Luo, seemingly intentionally or unintentionally. Speaking of distorting history, Boss Luo suddenly remembered that he wasn't clean, so he didn't push the blame to the previous one, but just maintained his demeanor and smiled. The mood that I've been brewing is about to disappear. The girl sighed, shook her head, and sat down again. She cleared her throat and continued. The goddess of justice was born first. Actually, she was only born a little earlier than the goddess of truth. However, the sun god, Ra, preferred the goddess of truth, who was born later. He gave all his love and care to the goddess of truth. She almost got the love of all the gods and the creatures of the earth, but she couldn't get the love of a mortal. The mortal loved her older sister, the goddess of justice, who was born a little earlier than her. As she said this, the girl suddenly glanced at the mummy in the coffin. The goddess of truth, who couldn't get the love of this mortal, fell into a kind of bigotry that even she couldn't explain. The emotion called jealousy began to grow in the heart of the goddess of truth, and the contradiction between the goddess of justice and truth kept accumulating at the same time. Hearing this, let's guess who is in the coffin? Is it the goddess of justice or the goddess of truth? The princess frowned. This time she guessed correctly, but in order to let the neurotic girl finish speaking as soon as possible, she said the goddess of truth. The girl smiled and then said, the goddess of truth couldn't suppress the jealousy in her heart, so she attacked the goddess of justice. Unexpectedly, she was killed by the goddess of justice and was trapped in the coffin. The story is over. The princess was stunned. She opened her mouth and frowned subconsciously. Is it the goddess of justice? The girl still smiled. Because she was too jealous of the goddess of justice, the goddess of truth attacked and killed the goddess of justice in the cruelest way. The story is over. You better stop before you go too far. This was probably the limit of the princess' patience. But no matter how fierce she looked, she probably couldn't make the girl be serious. Sure enough, the girl said pitifully, Yaman Lana is the most impatient. If a woman like you is like this, she won't be able to get married. As a mother, I'm really worried about you. The princess slowly sighed. She walked away from the coffin without saying a word, and then knocked on the wall of the underground stone room where the coffin was placed. The girl suddenly asked curiously, What are you doing? Looking for something. The princess didn't look back. I'm not interested in listening to your nonsense. I want to find what I want. If I can't find it, I won't waste my time here. The girl blinked. If you don't listen to the story, the thing you want to find won't appear. What do you want me to do? The princess asked indifferently. The girl suddenly waved at the princess. The princess hesitated for a moment and finally walked to the girl's door silently. The mysterious girl didn't pick up the mallet this time, but just reached out and gently rubbed the princess' head. Yaman Lana, be good. Remember not to interrupt the story. Otherwise, Mom won't tell you stories in the future. The princess gritted her teeth and forced herself to endure, as if she would explode at any time. Just when the princess was about to explode, the mysterious girl said slowly. In fact, it wasn't like the fairy tale where the goddess of truth, who murdered the goddess of justice because of jealousy, suffered the consequences of her own actions, and the goddess of justice finally lived happily with the mortals. The goddess of truth easily dealt with the goddess of justice and punished the mortal man who didn't know how to appreciate her kindness. The princess snorted lightly, but she didn't have any conflict with such a result. The goddess of truth was loved by everyone, but the goddess of justice wasn't liked by the sun god, Ra. It was too easy for the goddess of truth to plot against her. If the goddess of truth could play such a bad hand, it could only be said that the goddess of truth was stupid. So, there was the goddess of justice and truth? Boss Luo suddenly said. The mysterious girl had a completely different attitude at this time. She nodded casually. Gods can die, but their functions can't be lost. The goddess of justice was just an accident. At the beginning of creation, it was clear that justice and truth should be the same. Matt, what's the punishment? Boss Luo asked again. The mysterious girl said calmly. As you can see, the goddess of justice is nailed in this coffin. These nails were actually made by the goddess of truth using her divine power to polish the bones of the mortal man. This way, the mortal and the goddess of justice can be together forever. Mister, are you suddenly afraid of women? Boss Luo just shook his head. At this time, Her Royal Highness sneered and said, using your lover's bones to nail yourself into a weapon for both parties in love is indeed the cruelest punishment. Legend has it that the dead have to weigh their sins with Matt's feather on the scale. I'm afraid there aren't many dead hearts that are lighter than Matt's feather. The mysterious girl acted as if she didn't hear anything and continued. Many years later, a man called Sieju, who lost everything in the war, accidentally came to this graveyard. Not only did he get the scales of good and evil, but he also touched a part of the body of the desert lord, Seth. He even opened the coffin where the goddess of justice was buried. This man always wanted to fully control the power of the scale, so he had a crazy idea to create a vessel. The princess suddenly felt relieved. Since the goddess of justice was in the coffin, it meant that it wasn't her mother's original body. This was probably a rare comfort at this time. But no matter how many times he tried, he failed. The mysterious girl suddenly sighed. How can a mortal control the power of God? Or rather, he was even influenced by the remaining consciousness of Seth and gradually lost himself. Finally, an idea that was crazier than creating a vessel was born. Siejadu was going to revive the goddess of justice. He still failed? The princess looked at the mummy in the coffin. It seemed that the answer was obvious. He didn't fail because even he didn't know if he could succeed. How can this be called a failure? The mysterious girl smiled and said, this plan hasn't stopped yet. Look, I'm standing in front of you, Yamarana. You. The princess was shocked and said subconsciously, you are one of the good and evil sides of the goddess of justice? Impossible. The scale doesn't have the ability to divide the dead. Of course, the scale naturally can't divide the dead. But what if it's a living person? The mysterious girl said in a low voice, the outside world has a set of civilization development that is completely different from God's power. Siejadu succeeded in extracting a substance called gene from the mummy. Through this substance, he successfully let a baby girl be born in this world. Then this baby girl is probably me. The princess couldn't help but rub her forehead. She tried to understand this incredible thing. The goddess of justice died as a god, but in the end, her gene was extracted, and through cloning technology, she was born. From theology to science. Between such two completely different fields, what exactly, if God can be cloned through biological methods, then what kind of God is God? The princess suddenly raised her head and said, wait, God's body? That's right, gods used to be humans too. The girl touched the princess' head at this time, or they were just human beings that developed earlier than the current human beings. I turned them into pre-humans. Chapter 1561. Antecedents. The literal meaning was the first batch of humans. Her Royal Highness had a bizarre experience and received higher education from the outside world, so she had no problem in understanding. But because she had no problem, she was shocked by the antecedents mentioned by the mysterious girl. She was also looking for the origin of gods. When she was in the outside world, Siejiadu, was a professor in a seminary, and she was pursuing science. But in the end, she just wanted to analyze the unsolved mysteries of gods from different angles. If what the mysterious girl said was true, and gods could be replicated through genetic cloning, then humans could create gods. However, in many mythological systems, humans were created by gods. Her Royal Highness was sweating profusely as she frantically analyzed the information she got from the mysterious girl. Her eyes were sometimes confused, sometimes frightened, and sometimes pale. Suddenly, the princess looked up. There was a gap in civilization, and the gods monopolized the technology of creation. However, with their own wisdom, humans once again stepped into this forbidden zone, just like the legendary Tower of Babel in ancient Babylon, which was destroyed after coming into contact with the realm of the gods. Just like the legendary Tower of Babel, which was destroyed after coming into contact with the realm of the gods. According to what you said, since there are antecedents, there are post-humans. We are post-humans who have mastered the power of life again and stepped into this forbidden zone. Boss Luo's eyes lit up. Whether it was Claudia or her Royal Highness, she could always think of something quickly. The mysterious girl said calmly, "Gods will not allow post-humans to step into this forbidden zone. The deeper you go into this forbidden zone, the faster the extinction of humans will be." Why? Her Royal Highness frowned, and her eyes suddenly became filled with yearning and fanaticism. As a princess who had fought against giant beasts for many years, she was like the side of the martial arts faction that worshipped strength more. After post-humans step into the forbidden zone and grasp power comparable to gods, they can fight against gods. Because resources are limited. The mysterious girl shook her head and said, "Every world has a limited amount of resources. These resources are enough to provide for some of the deities, but obviously not all of them. Even the gods fight each other, let alone the gods against the humans. If there was a creator above everything, then the desire to fight was probably this creator's evil hobby. It was engraved in the source of life from the very beginning, in the bones and blood of all living beings. I don't know what the Tower of Babel is, but I have experienced something similar to the destruction of the world. The goddess of justice in this coffin, although she is a sacrifice for the goddess of truth's jealousy, in the final analysis, it is because of the lack of resources. The goddess of justice and the goddess of truth should be one, but they are divided into two. Each of them is only half, which means they are not complete. Do you understand? The princess shook her head. She had wanted to say that she did not understand, but in truth, she was very clear about these things. The problem of resources, even if it was not between the gods but between humans, was so sharp and profound. Now that you have been resurrected, what do you want to do? The princess decided to put these questions aside and return to reality. She looked at the mysterious girl and asked in a deep voice, "Do you want to take revenge on the goddess of truth? She used such a cruel method to seal you in this coffin. I don't know how many years it has been." Revenge? The mysterious girl suddenly laughed. "Why do I want to take revenge? The one who was murdered is the goddess of justice, not me. Remember, I am just a copy of her genes, but I am not her. Even if I obtained some power and memories when I was born, I am still me. If that is the case, why do you want to create a vessel and completely control the power of the scale?" The princess said coldly. The mysterious girl was still swinging her slender legs. "Creating a vessel is what the high priest wants. He wants to create a world without pain. Of course, such a wish is probably only induced by the remnant of this body in the scale. It might not be what he really wants. As for me, why can't I obtain the power of the scale? Why should I refuse to obtain such a powerful power?" She wanted to be better. She wanted to be better. She wanted to move forward. She wanted to get more. It didn't matter if it was useful or not. As long as she had more, it would be good. Even if she had more, it would only be a waste. The ancestors are still human, the mysterious girl said calmly. They are still human. The princess was silent for a long time. Finally, she sighed and said slowly, "So, Mother is your dividing surface, right?" The mysterious girl answered directly and said casually, "When I was just born, I didn't have much power. I couldn't compare to the high priest. Also, because of some other factors, I have always felt guilty towards him." Guilty? The princess frowned. The girl shook her head and suddenly jumped down from the coffin. She stretched her body and said, "What that man wanted to do is actually not that bad, at least in my opinion. You don't have to refute anything, because this is a problem that I view from a subjective point of view. Universal values don't exist for me, because the concept of ancestry has been in my mind since I was born." The princess snorted. The girl said, "You are angry because you feel that the high priest treated everyone as materials and played with all the humans in Sun City. But in fact, from the beginning of the plan until now, no one in Sun City has died in the plan. Those people in the pool are just sleeping. Birth, old age, sickness, and death are just dividing surfaces. They're just sand that came to life because of the power of the scale. If you really want to talk about who is a sacrifice, it is probably only those travelers who died an unnatural death. But in the end, it is only because they unfortunately broke into the Oasis Temple and died in the mouth of the behemoth. But who can guarantee that people will not encounter danger? Even if it is not an oasis, but just a natural disaster, won't there still be innocent deaths?" Her Royal Highness remained silent. At this time, the girl walked up to her and looked up at her. "Do you know the true origin of your father?" The princess was stunned and frowned subconsciously. "What do you mean? Don't you find it strange that you didn't see your father's original body in the last secret room or in the pool?" The princess's eyes narrowed slightly, and memories quickly emerged in her mind. Indeed, as the mysterious girl said, she did not see the original body of the pharaoh in the pool or even in the high priest's material warehouse. Could it be? The princess took a deep breath and said, "Father, he has always been the original body." "Yes, it is the original body," the mysterious girl said slowly. "Moreover, your father is a new body cultivated by the high priest with his own genes, and the implant is Horus's left eye." "What?" "The miniature temple, or rather, the wall had been peeled off, and the original face of the huge goddess statue was exposed in the strong electromagnetic field in front of the miniature temple." The red genie stopped. Naturally, Siejidu, who had been swung around by it countless times, was finally freed from the craters in the square. At the end of the violent physical therapy, Siejidu could be seen lying on the ground because of his serious injuries. His eyes regained a trace of clarity. At this time, the red lamp god was floating in the air with a proud expression. But the little maid was no longer here. She ran to Yamalana's side. Yamalana naturally found the place where the red lamp god accidentally hit her. So, in fact, only Mr. Otto and Ibn were still here. Mr. Otto, the night watcher, did not look at the red lamp god at this time. He walked directly to Siejiadu and squatted down. "How do you feel? How much of your consciousness have you recovered?" He stretched out his palm in front of Siejiadu and shook his finger. "Tell me, are you Seth or Siejiadu now? I have always been me." It spoke in the tone that the night watcher Otto was familiar with. It was the tone when they walked together on the way to the Oasis Desert. "Will it come out again?" Mr. Otto thought for a while. "I'm talking about Seth." "Seth? Probably." Siejidu shook his head. "After all, this is not the real Seth. It is just a combination of some of its residual will and my inner desire. We will never be able to completely eliminate the black side in our hearts." Mr. Otto nodded and then said directly, "Tell me the real way to leave. I don't want to involve you too much. I probably have the ability to kill you now." Siejidu glanced at the red lamp god floating behind Otto. He probably did not know the relationship between the two, so he just asked curiously, "This is the lamp god?" The red lamp god hummed twice, but it seemed that it did not want to talk too much with Siejidu. Siejidu smiled slightly, but the smile of the jackal head on his body was so ugly. "I have heard the story of the magic lamp, and I often tell the story of the lamp god to my daughter. But I did not expect the lamp god to be red. Stories are just stories." The red lamp god said indifferently, "There are also blue lamp gods, and they are female." "Bah, I see." Siejidu smiled awkwardly again. Then, He looked at Mr. Otto and said, I didn't think that I would be able to wake up after being deified, and in this way. Otto, my friend, forgive me for lying to you. Wrote, Otto, the night watcher, directly put the black knife on Siegetu's neck, and at the same time took out a pistol and pointed it at the center of Siegetu's forehead. Wrote, there is no way to leave. Siegetu said with a bitter smile. All the data is enough. Now we just need to wait for the vessel to be completed. We just need to wait for the vessel to be completed. Even though it is faster than expected and there are so many uncertainties, there is still a chance. Everything will become the choice of fate. Then, bang, 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 bang. Mr. Otto pulled the trigger abruptly. Gunshots rang out one after another, reverberating in the empty space. Siegetu could smell the smell of gunpowder on the ground beside his ears. The gunshots were close to his ear. Wrote. Mr. Otto's eyes widened. Don't force me. Siegetu just muttered to himself. Everything is the choice of fate. Mr. Otto grabbed Siegetu's head fiercely and stared at him. But he was fearless, like an empty shell. Mr. Otto had no choice but to put him down and vent his anger by shooting at the sky until the bullets in the pistol were all gone. TSK, the last time I saw you this angry was when your immortal partner was assassinated, and you were infuriated. The Red Genie could not help but mock him from the side. Mr. Otto turned back and stared at the Red Lamp God expressionlessly. The Red Lamp God's eyes suddenly became a bit unsteady. Why? Why are you looking at me? You just made a wish for immortality, not immortality. It's none of my business. I didn't mean to say this, but seeing you like this, you're just a half-finished product. Mr. Otto said coldly. A stupid student who was framed by his beloved teacher. After thousands of years, the Red Lamp God did not know what stupid meant, but it was obviously a curse word. It suddenly became furious. Otto, I can kill you. Then you can wait for your wish to be cleared and start all over again. Mr. Otto sneered, You useless lamp god. As he spoke, Mr. Aod resolutely walked towards the exposed statue of the goddess. What do you want to do? The Red Lamp God frowned and asked. Mr. Otto turned back slightly. This statue appeared after the Libra was put into the groove, and it would never appear for no reason. I don't know why it was exposed, but since it appeared for a purpose, I'll destroy it. Hearing this, Siegetu's expression changed. Mr. Otto sneered and said, Even if I can't destroy this statue, even if I can only break one of its fingers, I won't resign myself to fate. Mr. Aod snorted coldly and ran toward the statue. Siegetu wanted to get up at this time, but he was really swung by the Red Lamp God. This so-called deified body at this time couldn't exert any strength. At this time, the Red Lamp God looked at Mr. Otto's back and whispered quietly, Well, he's still so handsome. Siegetu glanced at it subconsciously. Obviously, he heard it. What are you looking at? I'm going to hit you. Hashtag Happy Mid-Autumn Festival. Chapter 1562. The Underground River, the Secret Chamber Beneath the Hut. When the mysterious girl revealed the true identity of the pharaoh of the kingdom, that he was an individual cultivated by the high priest using his own genetic material, the princess, of course, was unwilling to believe it even though she knew what the so-called genetic material cultivation was all about. There were too many concealment and deceit in the world. Deceit was everywhere, even between parents and children. The difference between believing and not believing was just a thought, but the princess knew that the truth behind the strong desire to not believe this matter was real. After a long silence, the princess took a deep breath and asked, My father, does he know? Of course not. The mysterious girl said calmly. If the pharaoh knew about this, then all his actions and thoughts would deviate and naturally would not achieve the result that Siegetu wanted. You've always been here? The princess asked suddenly. Never left? I've never left this place, the mysterious girl said casually. In fact, Siegetu's ability has always been stronger than mine. Even if I wanted to leave this place, I couldn't. Then how do you know what's happening outside? The princess asked coldly. Whether it's big or small, you're so clear about it. Probably afraid that I'll be bored or something. Siegetu set up some gadgets here that let me know what's happening in Sun City. The mysterious girl took out an item from her chest. It was definitely something that Sun City's technology could not create, but it was something that everyone in the modern realm did not know about: a mobile phone. When I'm bored, I can use it to connect to the network that Siet built in Sun City and get access to the entire surveillance system of Sun City, she said with a smile, but there seemed to be something else hidden in her smiling eyes. The princess shook her head, feeling a wave of discomfort, the feeling that from the past to the present, every single day was being recorded. Yamalana was the cutest in the world when she was a child. Look, this is how you looked when you were a child. The mysterious girl then said, her fingers swiping a few times on the screen of the mobile phone, and actually opened a video. In the video, an 8 or 9-year-old girl was playing in the bathtub. She was playing with her mother in the bathtub, laughing happily. Her Royal Highness was startled for a moment. Then, like a small animal whose tail had been stepped on, she felt as if she had been stripped naked. Most importantly, other than the mysterious girl, there was also a mysterious guy wearing the uniform of a royal guard. Look, it's so cute. Unexpectedly, this mysterious girl took out her mobile phone and approached Boss Luo, inviting him to watch the video. It's a pity that I can only watch it from here. If only the person in the video was me. I missed so many opportunities to create beautiful memories with little Yamalana. Oh, you should also watch this video. Yamalana's dancing when she was a child is very beautiful. Boss Luo was the type of person who would patiently watch whatever you showed him. He didn't have any special hobbies. When Princess Royal Highness saw this, she felt as if she was going to faint. She could barely remember how many things she had done when she was a child that would embarrass her to death now. She stood still. Her body was already trembling because of embarrassment and anger. However, the mysterious girl didn't seem to have any intention of stopping. She looked like an old mother who was showing off her own daughter with other people's wives in the park. You better stop before you go too far. If there was no threat, even Princess Royal Highness had to admit that the mysterious girl didn't have to listen to her. This seemed to be the tragedy of the week. Unexpectedly, the mysterious girl actually put away her mobile phone. She winked at Boss Luo and pretended to be serious. That's all you can watch. After this, my daughter will start to grow up. If you watch it, you have to take responsibility. Okay, madam. Boss Luo felt that perhaps madam was the most appropriate way to address her. Please, don't let me see it. The mysterious girl suddenly laughed. I like your character. You're not like the previous one who had a gloomy character. He might be talking and laughing with you, but in his heart, he might be thinking about how to harvest all of you. But he really has the ability to do so. Don't you think it's infuriating? It's so infuriating. Don't you think it's infuriating? It's so infuriating. Princess Royal Highness was so angry that her lungs were about to explode, and her face was pale. The mysterious girl suddenly narrowed her eyes. Seeing Princess Royal Highness's expression, her eyes were full of smiles. The smile flashed and disappeared. The mysterious girl suddenly sighed and looked at Princess Royal Highness seriously. Okay, Yamanalana's relaxing time is over. Next, make your choice. Princess Royal Highness couldn't help but frown. The mysterious girl clapped her hands at this time. The wall in front of the stairs of the secret room, where the corpse of the goddess of justice was hidden, suddenly split open 2 doors. Left, right? Listen, the mysterious girl said indifferently. From the beginning, you knew your identity as a vessel, Yamanalana. Even you accepted this identity, new part of Siejidu's plan, and even agreed to this plan. That's why you appeared in the outside world with the identity of Claudia. Now, since Siejidu told you to come here, it means that he needs you to start the last part of his plan. So, whether you're a perfect vessel or not will be revealed soon. Princess Royal Highness couldn't help but look serious. The mysterious girl at this time spread her hands left and right, as if they were corresponding to the cracked doors in front of her. The door on the right hides the last thing that will make you a perfect vessel. As long as you get it, you have a chance to become the master of the scale. Listen, there's only a chance. The left? Princess Royal Highness frowned. She remembered what Xie said when he let her come down. You can only open the door on the left. You can never open the door on the right. This is my last advice to you as a father. My Princess Royal Highness. Room door. It was referring to the two doors that the mysterious girl had just opened. The left. The mysterious girl paused and looked at Princess Royal Highness for a while before slowly saying, "Freedom. If you choose the door on the left, you will be free. You will no longer be a vessel. Everything you have as a princess of the kingdom will disappear. You will be Claudia, the ordinary girl in the outside world. You will not need to carry anything. If I choose the left." Sun City? Sun City is just a large experimental site used to cultivate vessels. The mysterious girl said indifferently. The mysterious girl said calmly. It's a place used to create perfect vessels. It has been restarted many times before you. You will not be the first vessel that Xie found suitable, and you may not be the last. So, even if you choose freedom, Sun City will continue to operate until a vessel that can truly become the master of the scale appears. So, even if you choose freedom, it doesn't matter, and you don't need to bear any burden. Why? Princess Royal Highness muttered to herself. You need to think about it yourself. The mysterious girl said softly, I'm just here to open these two doors for you who came here. I am giving you the chance to choose, and I will not provide any reference. That is all. Come, choose your own freedom and forget the weight of everything. Or choose a fusion that you do not know whether it will succeed or not, and even risk becoming a sacrifice in this cycle of Sun City. Walk to the door on the right. She subconsciously walked to the two doors and stopped, but could not take another step for a long time. The mysterious girl did not say anything else and just looked on silently. Suddenly, Princess Royal Highness moved. She once again closed the distance between herself and the two doors, and then sat cross-legged between the two doors and closed her eyes. Meditation. She threw herself away from the outside world and was completely immersed in her own thoughts. The only thought that existed was, left or right. This seems to be called meditation. The girl said after some thought. You learned it in the outside world. Is it very useful? Boss Luo said. Usually, meditation can help people focus and relieve pressure. That's great. The girl nodded. The will of mortals can be tempered in such a way, but the gods can't. Their minds are too active and can't stop. Let's guess if she will choose the left or the right. Boss Luo shook his head. He said that he would not guess anything. The mysterious girl pursed her lips and said, the guesses in the past were so accurate. Every guess was spot on. It was so accurate that it was as if everything was arranged in advance. How good was that? Luochio smiled faintly. He would not make guesses just because of what she said. That might be what she wanted to affect the course of reality through his ability. She might not know what kind of ability it was. She might have only seen it, felt it, or even been affected by it. Have you seen it before, the previous boss? I've seen it before. At this time, the mysterious girl was sitting on the ground. While looking at the princess who had entered a meditative state, she said casually, I'm talking about the guy lying in the coffin. I've seen it before. Anyway, I don't remember much. It's probably just some trivial things. I remember clearly that the person in front of you and the sun god, were sitting in front of a square table, playing a game of colorful tiles. Why? Don't you know each other? We've only met once, Boss Luo said calmly. What the hell is a game where people sit around a square table and rub together pieces of colorful signboards? Oh, the mysterious girl blinked. Then you handed it over. Are you so capricious? That's great. I can inherit this supernatural power after meeting it once. Why didn't such a good thing happen to me? I say, you must be the creator's illegitimate son in your previous life, right? Boss Luo shook his head. As for whether he was denying it or not, no one knew. Perhaps even he himself didn't know. The girl felt bored and shook her head. Where did Sun City buy it from? The goddess of justice and truth, Matt, bought it. As for where she is now, I definitely don't know. You see, the goddess of justice has been nailed in the coffin for so long. Speaking of which, how much does this younger sister hate her older sister? She was a life created from the goddess of justice's genes and had part of the goddess of justice's memories. But she seemed to be different from the goddess of justice. She spoke like an outsider, a bystander. There are many things that I don't know. The girl yawned and seemed to be sleepy. For example, during the long time that the goddess of justice was locked here, why did Matt disappear? Why did her scales of good and evil stay here? Why did the scales contain Seth's balls and Horus's left eye? Finally, the gods of the entire pantheon seemed to have disappeared. But why did they disappear? I don't know any of these. Sietjetu, on the other hand, has the idea of studying these things, so he seems to have worked a lot outside. He even became a professor in some seminary. But the history of the outside world is somewhat different from what I know. I don't know how much has changed and how much has been lost over a long period of time. Speaking of which, I am innocent. Boss Luo silently listened to the girl's narration. Let me tell you, the mysterious girl added, if I fail this time, I won't stay in this place. I've recovered a lot of my strength, and I can leave this place anytime now. So, are you sure you don't want to guess which door she's going to choose? Boss Luo still shook his head and gave an official response. If I really have to guess, unless the lady can pay the corresponding price. The girl shook her head and rolled her eyes. There's one thing that is completely different from the one before you. You both look very stingy. Boss Luo smiled slightly. He felt that this was a more housekeeping behavior. At this time, the princess suddenly opened her eyes and stood up. She seemed to have an answer and knew which door to choose. When Mr. Otto climbed up the statue of the goddess of justice with a speed that was beyond the reach of ordinary people, he almost didn't encounter any obstacles and successfully went deep into the head of the statue of the goddess of justice. Here, Mr. Otto stopped because what he saw was a group of gigantic servers. Chapter 1563. He had modern knowledge. When he saw the things in front of him for the first time, he had already recognized the origin of these things, the server group. The flashing indicator lights on the server were like stars in the night sky. Even without investigating, Mr. Otto had already felt how huge the amount of data stored in it was. There are so many monitors buried in Sun City. Mr. Otto walked inside. Siejiatu, did you store the character data of everyone in Sun City here? There was no danger here. In the depths of the jungle-like server group, Mr. Otto was alarmed by something placed here. A huge screen and console. Something was being monitored on the screen. It was something that happened somewhere. Mr. Otto saw Her Royal Highness the Princess. In the area and the square below the statue, there was another Princess Yamalana and another girl. My father, does he know? If Pharaoh knows about this, then all his actions and thoughts will be deviated. Naturally, he will not be able to achieve the result Siejeta wants. That's all you can see. My daughter will start to grow later. If you see it, you have to take responsibility. He clearly heard the conversation between the girl and Her Royal Highness. But because he could hear it clearly, he frowned at this time. Because the incoherence of these conversations and the mysterious girl's actions at this time all indicated one thing. There should be a third person in the secret room on the screen. But it didn't appear on the screen. Why didn't it appear? There were probably only two possibilities. First, this person didn't exist. It might just be a fantasy, a mission imagined by the mysterious girl and Her Royal Highness at the same time. Second, this person existed, but his existence couldn't be captured by the surveillance camera. Perhaps it was an ability such as invisibility or light refraction. This made Mr. Otto very curious. He didn't know why there was such a layout in the deepest part of the statue. When he walked to the console and prepared to study the nature of this large group of servers, a line of text suddenly appeared on the screen. The words that appeared one after another formed a complete bureau. Welcome, Mr. Otto. Hello. Mr. Aotal was slightly shocked. He looked around and finally saw a camera at the top of the screen. He couldn't help but frown. Who are you? I don't have a name yet. The words on the screen flashed again. Father said that I should only have a name after the experiment is successful. Mr. Aotal frowned. Father. Siejatu? Yes. Mr. Aotal pondered for a moment. Are you a human or a program of this pile of servers? I was born from this pile of data. Mr. Aotal, I am recording the last stage of the experiment. I hope you will not disturb me. Mr. Aotawa shook his head and sneered. I don't care what you are. I want to leave this godforsaken place. Whoever stops me, I will kill, destroy. You won't. The text continued to appear unhurriedly. I have recorded everything about your life in Sun City for the past 7 months and 13 days, including your behavior and language. Through analysis, you would definitely not choose to perish together with the enemy, because you still have a reason to not let yourself die. You're not sure that if you destroy me, you will not be trapped in this place forever, so you won't. Mr. Aotawa sneered again and raised the black sword in his hand. Whether I dare or not is not up to you. I have the final say. After the experiment is over, I will open a passage to leave. You can leave. Mr. Aotawa was startled and frowned. Why should I believe you? You can only choose to believe in me. Moreover, I will not hurt people. The purpose of my creation is not to hurt humans. Mr. Aotawa couldn't help but walk back and forth. What exactly are you? Why did Siejiatu create you? The experiment you mentioned refers to what happened on the screen? Vessel. Are you the vessel? No comment. Mr. Aotawa raised the black sword without saying a word and slashed at the console without thinking. The sharp black long knife easily cut open the panel of the console and cut off the wires inside. This made the huge screen in front suddenly become blurry. You are right. I will not completely destroy you, but I will dismantle you, although I'm not very good at it. I have enough time to study it slowly. It seems that the record of you is still not enough. Mr. Aotawa sneered again and raised the black sword and slashed directly. This slash was deeper than the first one. The buoy on the screen began to move, and new words appeared at the same time. I'm a monitor. After the Libra's ability is fully released, I will be in charge of the distribution, management, observation, and elimination of all unstable dividing surfaces. The purpose of my father's creation is that I cannot be affected by human emotions and can deal with everything fairly. I represent the truth, just like the goddess of justice and truth. Mr. Aotawa opened his mouth. He had heard of Siejiatu's plan to create a world without sorrow. Siejiatu had even extended an invitation to him, but he was rejected. Siejiatu wants to make you a god of the new world? Mr. Aotawa finally came to this conclusion. He finally understood Siejiatu's intention. In Siejiatu's mind, all human beings, including himself, could not escape the essence of evil. Therefore, even if he could fully release the power of the Libra, he did not want to become a god himself. Instead, he wanted to give the position of God to a bunch of cold data. I'm the monitor. This is a madman's idea, but Mr. Aotawa could not help but smile bitterly. But I have to admit, it is imaginable. If you don't mind this kind of new world being a bit boring, I'm afraid it will be a very honest world without sorrow. I'm glad that you can agree with that. Mr. Aotawa suddenly sneered. Because you have taken away the sorrow. Not only the sorrow, all the greed and desire have been taken away by you. What about human beings? The real humans are in deep slumber, and only the facets that represent the good side are moving freely on the earth. What are they happy about? What are they crying about? Everything is going according to the script. There are no mistakes. It's perfect. It's perfect. What is wrong with this? There is no poverty, no death due to war and struggle. I will try to control the population as much as possible. There will not even be a situation of resource depletion and environmental pollution. The ecosystem is closed and cyclical. It will continue to be. There is nothing wrong with it. Mr. Aotawa shook his head and then said indifferently, There's only one thing that is not good. Please go ahead. Mr. Aotawa raised the black sword again. No one can arrange my fate, not even the gods. As he said, Mr. Aotawa slashed at the center of the screen this time. But just as he was about to cut the screen, the black sword suddenly stopped. Because at this time, there was a face on the screen, a woman's face. Mr. Aotawa stopped subconsciously, but his eyes were filled with anger. How did you know? For 7 months and 13 days, you have been hiding in the city of the sun. Sometimes, you will carve this woman's face out of wood. You will also say some strange words in your dreams. Of course, there are only 2 times in total. But through my analysis, I can conclude that you have a kind of love for this woman. I have tried my best to send those drones. I didn't expect it to still be so. Mr. Ao Tua shook his head. How many pairs of eyes did Siejatu bury in the City of the Sun? In the New World, you can live with this woman. The text slowly appeared again at this time. You can have a complete family, a complete life, and have children. Don't doubt, in the New World, I will write the life background of each individual and then release it. Mr. Ao Tua sneered. It's a good idea, but unfortunately, this woman is already dead. No matter how powerful the Libra is, can it resurrect the dead and divide people again? I have repeatedly studied your behavior. You have always wanted to resurrect your lover, right? Mr. Ao Tuo's attitude was noncommittal. So, you will definitely preserve your lover's body well. There is no technology to resurrect the dead here, but there is the technology to extract genetic material and clone people. I can adjust the appearance of the new life completely to your lover's appearance. As long as you give me enough information about your lover, I can synthesize your lover's original personality and memory according to the existing data. So, she will be no different from your lover's real resurrection. In fact, this is also a kind of resurrection. You can really do it? Mr. Ao Tuo's breathing became faster in an instant. In theory, yes. If the initial stage fails, I will continue to try until it succeeds. Because if I promise you, I will always try to complete this thing. I am fair and trustworthy. Mr. Ao Tua was silent. Finally, he slowly lowered the black sword in his hand and said indifferently, "What is the so-called final experiment? Let Yamanlana make a choice. Why must it be her?" Mr. Ao Tua asked confusedly. No comment. Mr. Ao Tua took a deep look at the camera on the screen in front of him, and a sneer appeared at the corner of his mouth. He slowly raised the black sword in his hand again. Mr. Ao Tua, you are the smartest and most knowledgeable among all the data. You shouldn't make such an unwise move. What? You're just a pile of data. Do you know fear? Mr. Ao Tua couldn't help but chuckle. You were just a pile of data. Siejatu created you, and you really think you are the god of the new world? Ridiculous. Let's not talk about whether such a new world will eventually appear. Just you alone, once the power is turned off, you will be nothing. It seems that we can't reach a consensus, Mr. Ao Tua. You are much more violent than you have always been. Of course, I never like to let others control my fate. Only I can write my own fate. Mr. Ao Tuo's eyes were filled with fanaticism. Besides, didn't anyone tell you that I used to be a tyrant for a period of time? If so, I can only take protective measures. Up to you. Mr. Ao Tua said indifferently, but I will still let this experiment continue. The text flashed, and this time only a simple question mark appeared. Mr. Ao Tua sneered and said, "I don't trust you. I don't trust anyone. I only trust myself. Your proposal is very good. I am moved. So, from now on, you can only serve me. Under my absolute control, you will create the world I want." This is wrong, Mr. Ao Tua. My existence is to make the world fair. I will not be anyone's tool. I don't mean to ask for your opinion. I am simply telling you that I am going to do this. Whether you're willing or not, you can only take over for me. The cursor on the screen was still flashing, but this time, before the text appeared, the black longsword had already slashed the screen open. Mr. Ao Tua said indifferently, "How many days has it been in 7 months? How many thousands of years have I lived? I can't even count it myself. I can't even see myself clearly. How can you rely on a bunch of electronic eyes? Ridiculous." Mr. Ao Tua directly reached in through the crack in the screen and grabbed a bunch of lines. He snorted coldly and said, "This princess even dares to kill herself. Even if I have to use her to inherit the power of the scale, I am more willing to be the one in the square." In the square, Yamanlana quietly stayed beside the pharaoh, who had an eagle head and a human body. She held the pharaoh's hand tightly. The little maid, Yelaine, was waiting beside the pharaoh, not knowing what to do. She wanted to say something to comfort the pharaoh, but she didn't know where to start. It was really hard for her to accept that the pharaoh whom she had always respected, had become like this. "Your Highness, don't be sad." The little maid plucked up her courage and said, "No matter what happens, I will help you. I could still make a wish with the genie. I could do it." Yamanlana raised her head and said softly, "You have been with me since you were young, just like a family." "Family? Do you understand that feeling?" The little maid nodded her head vigorously. Yamanlana smiled bitterly, "But I have never understood it. Even if I understand it, it is too late. Yelaine, don't waste your wish on me. This Sun City owes you too much. Leave your wish to yourself." "Your Highness." The little maid still wanted to say something. But at this moment, the sound of footsteps came from afar. She looked back and saw that Mr. Night Watcher was holding a sword and walking towards her expressionlessly. In his hand, he grabbed the jackal-headed high priest Xie Jatu and dragged him on the ground. Behind him was Ibn, who was trembling in fear, and the red genie, who was rolling its eyes all the way. Finally, Mr. Aota dragged Xiao to Yamanlana and threw Xie Jatu out. "I need you to fight," Mr. Aota said indifferently. "Do the other choice you are making, because you are also qualified." Yamanlana couldn't help but open her mouth and was slightly moved. Chapter 1564. Left or right? Before Her Royal Highness entered the door, the answer was still unknown. "Which side do you think she will choose?" the mysterious girl asked again. She seemed to have forgotten that Boss Luo said he wouldn't guess. This time, she didn't hear Luoccio's voice. The mysterious girl couldn't help but look back. She found that Luoccio had disappeared. Maybe he had left, or maybe he was still there, but he didn't let her see him again. The girl blinked. She was replicated through the genes of the Goddess of Justice, so she got part of the Goddess of Justice's memory, but not much. The Goddess of Justice probably knew very little about the shop, not to mention a fake like her. The mysterious girl pursed her lips and looked at the princess again. This time, the princess was already walking to the left door. It was indeed the left door. Although it was only a slight deviation, the girl could feel the princess's footsteps. Perhaps the princess's gaze had already landed on the door on the left. The left door represented freedom and a new life. The right door represented the opportunity to become a vessel, a bridge to cross the gap between human and God. Although this bridge could also be broken, the mysterious girl didn't seem disappointed. She just watched silently, waiting for the last moment to come. Finally, the princess stopped in front of the door on the left. She was only half a step away from stepping into the door on the left. This was the choice Siejidu hoped she could make before she went underground and met the mysterious girl. The princess slowly reached out her hand and touched the light on the left door. She was so close to touching the light of freedom, just in front of her fingertips, so close. But that was all he could do. Her Royal Highness took a deep breath and suddenly chuckled. She muttered to herself, "I guess this counts as having once breathed in the air of freedom." After that, under the girl's surprised and complicated gaze, the princess resolutely turned to the right door. This time, she didn't deliberately speed up or slow down. It was just the same. Think carefully about the consequences of failure. The mysterious girl suddenly said, "It is possible that you will be turned into ashes. Isn't this the purpose of you creating me and cultivating me?" The princess looked at the mysterious girl indifferently. "I'm just doing what you want, as the princess of the kingdom." The girl opened her mouth as if she wanted to say something, but in the end, her words turned into a mouthful of turbid air and slowly exhaled. Then, she said, "I hope you can succeed." Her Royal Highness nodded and walked towards the door on the right expressionlessly. At this critical moment, a loud noise came from above. Then, the ceiling quickly collapsed, and a huge flying curtain rushed out from the collapsed hole. "How about adding another person to this game?" Mr. Otto's voice. When the stones fell to the side of the mysterious girl, they were automatically bounced by something. There seemed to be an invisible layer of protection around her body. She frowned and looked up the curtain. The curtains were even bigger than before. The reason for the curtains being bigger was probably to accommodate more people. Not only was there Otto, but there was also Ibn, the little maid Yelaine, Yamanlana, and the red genie. Even Pharaoh with an eagle head and human body, and Siejatu with a jackal head and human body were there. Suddenly, Mr. Otto lifted Pharaoh and Siejatu one by one, and then directly threw them down from the curtain to the side of the coffin. Seeing this, Yamanlana's eyes suddenly spat fire. She grabbed Mr. Otto's collar. But after all, she was brave, but she was no match for Mr. Otto, the former king. She was caught and then thrown down from the curtain to the front of the two doors. At this time, because Mr. A.O. treated His Highness so roughly, the little handmaiden was instantly enraged. Wearing the golden armor, she looked very threatening. Mr. A.O. shrugged and jumped down without thinking. He was not willing to compete with this little handmaiden in brute force. "Bastard!" the little girl suddenly shouted. He had worn Yalian's golden armor before, so he naturally knew how powerful this golden armor was. This thing could actually use a small part of the lamp god's divine power, but this little girl didn't know how to use it, so she could only use it to increase her strength. Yamanlana fell to the ground and rolled to the front of the princess. The two finally wanted to see each other, so they looked at each other. Yamanlana instantly stood up. Although she looked very embarrassed, the serious look on her face didn't reduce at all. The princess also looked at her. "You didn't die." The princess glanced at Yamanlana. "That shot of mine I didn't miss." Yamanlana sneered. This was a very strange feeling. She was facing herself, and not the other side of herself, but her own self. No matter if it was her memories, thoughts, or even personalities, they were all the same. Yamanlana said that if it was her, she would definitely shoot that shot. So she didn't hate the princess, and she wouldn't ask why, because she knew the reason. Then, here comes the question. Yamanlana took a deep breath. "You and me. Who is Claudia? What do you think?" The princess shook her head. "We are all Siejatu's toys." Claudia, Yamanlana, these two identities have been completely confused after so many swaps. Maybe only Siejatu himself knows. Maybe even he doesn't know it now. I feel that I am the one, and you feel the same, right? So, only one of us can exist. Yamanlana took a deep breath and looked at the princess who was standing in front of the right door, frowned and asked, "What does the right door mean?" "The possibility of vessel." The princess didn't hide it. "Left?" Yamanlana asked directly. The princess still didn't hide it. "Freedom. Your final choice is the right door." Yamanlana was silent for a moment and said. The princess said indifferently, "You will be the same. Only one of us can go in." Almost at the same time, the princess and Yamanlana pulled out their pistols. Their movements, timing, even accuracy, and postures were like a mirror in front of them. Duel. Two princesses, two princesses? The little maid was completely confused by the scene in front of her. She shook her head and almost fainted, so she could only ask the red lamp god for help. The red lamp god was like a cat whose tail was stepped on. He suddenly raised his hair and said, "Bah, double the happiness? No way. Anyway, they're both princesses. It doesn't matter who lives or dies. You want me to do 2 jobs for 1 wish? Dream on. Then I will make another wish," the little maid said with grievance. The red lamp god suddenly had a big headache. Then he had an idea and said, "This is simple. The fake one will turn into sand. I will kill both of them, and the one who turns into sand will be the fake one." The little maid kicked the red lamp god fiercely and said angrily, "The real one will also die." "Idiot woman, who am I? I can be resurrected even if I die." The red lamp god suddenly snorted, but secretly added in his heart, "Only the one who died not long ago can be resurrected." This. The little maid couldn't help but hesitate. "You better not have this idea," the mysterious girl suddenly said at this time, and then looked at the red lamp god with interest. "Demon? Moreover, it's such a powerful spiritual monster. It's really rare. Hey, can you tell me who created you?" Another woman? The red lamp god appeared this time, and the women he saw were more and more troublesome, so he was already annoyed. At this time, he impatiently said, "Shut up. The thing I hate most in my life is women." "Just a demon." The mysterious girl slightly raised the corner of her mouth. "Forget about the one just now. I can't do anything about it, but you? A horrible aura suddenly descended in the tomb, and this aura was beyond the range of what mortals could sense. Most directly, Ibn and the little maid did not feel anything at all. Mr. Otto frowned, and he vaguely felt a sense of fear, but there was no fear on his face. However, the red genie was different. The moment the aura descended, it only had one thought in its mind, and that was to hide in its own magic lamp as soon as possible. The aura released by the mysterious girl frightened him. At the same time, it also made him think of something extremely bad, the power of the rules hidden in the magic lamp, which restrained him. Divinity, you! The red lamp god could not help but scream. What the hell are you? Even the pharaoh of the kingdom who could deify into the image of Horus, and Siet, who could deify into the image of Seth, only deified into the image of a god. They had a little supernatural power, but there was no sign of divinity. That was why the red lamp god was so disdainful and said that he would kill anyone who dared to cross the sea. But this mysterious girl was different. Me? The mysterious girl blinked at this time and said with a smile, "Can't you see that I am such a cute girl? Even though I am their mother now. I'm not afraid of you. I am not afraid of you." The red lamp god continued to scream, "You only have divinity, and your power is weak. I'm not afraid of you. Don't come here." In an instant, he floated behind the little maid, put his hands on the little maid's shoulders, and shrank his head half. The dignity of the lamp god was once again lost in front of everyone. Mr. Otto shook his head and was too lazy to respond. Although the red genie was very powerful, he knew that the genie was actually very easy to deal with. It had too many restrictions. In the words of modern people, the lamp god was actually a tool. Otto did not know who created the magic lamp, but he could not help but secretly guess that the person who created the magic lamp was just a convenient handyman. "Oh, lamp god, I want to drink water." "Yes, great master. As you wish." So, he put his thoughts aside and asked the mysterious girl, "Why don't you distinguish between the two of them? In theory, only one vessel is needed. Since both of them are qualified vessels, the one who survives will naturally be better, and the winner will be stronger." The mysterious girl glanced at Mr. Otto indifferently. She didn't seem to have done anything. With just a simple look, Mr. Otto was sent flying and smashed into the wall, spitting out a mouthful of blood. "You have some special energy in you." The mysterious girl frowned. "It's very weak, but it seems to have a lot of potential. But that's just potential. Wait until it's strong enough. Then you'll have the right to speak. For now, you stay here quietly." Mr. Ao slid down from the wall and stood up awkwardly, wiping the blood from his mouth. He stood silently at the side, but his eyes kept looking back and forth at the scene. He had to admit that the girl was right, that chi in his body was indeed very powerful. But it was only when the people who called themselves Xian Yuan used it. What he could learn wasn't even the tip of the iceberg. Bang, bang, bang. At this moment, the sound of gunshots rang out one after another. Ignoring the collision between the girl and the lamp god, and even Otto, Her Royal Highness and Yamanlana, in front of the door, still wanted to kill each other. But they had the same memory, the same skills, and the same way of thinking. They could easily think of each other's every action and thought. They could dodge the direction of each other's shooting in advance. Their attack and defense seemed to have been rehearsed countless times. Neither of them could do anything to the other. Finally, when the bullets were used up, they threw away the pistols in their hands at the same time and changed to a bare-handed duel. But at this moment, Yamanlana's fist collided with Her Royal Highness' fist, and Her Royal Highness' fist was directly pressed down. In terms of strength, or in terms of physical strength, Yamanlana instantly gained the upper hand. It was just a moment, and it was a mistake of Her Royal Highness. The lack of physical strength caused her to be completely knocked to the ground by Yamanlana because of this mistake, and her throat was grabbed by Yamanlana. Her Royal Highness was furious, tightly grasping Yamanlana's hands, and her face showed a painful expression. "Now it's time to separate." Yamanlana looked down at her and said softly. Her Royal Highness' pupil suddenly shrank. At this moment, Yamanlana directly pulled Her Royal Highness up with great strength, and then threw Her Royal Highness to the left door. Her Royal Highness was thrown into the left door. At the same time, Yamanlana looked back at the people in the tomb, and then jumped back into the right door. The mysterious girl probably didn't expect this result. She frowned and didn't know what to think. At this moment, Mr. Otto leaned against the wall and slowly sat down, covering his chest. He was seriously injured. At this moment, he muttered mockingly, "If it was Claudia, of course she couldn't defeat the real princess who had experienced hundreds of battles, so she would definitely shoot. If it was the princess, of course she would kill the danger at the beginning. This shot, no matter what." The girl suddenly looked at Mr. Otto. Aotawa happened to raise his head and meet her eyes. He smiled and said, "So, the two of them are real, right? They aren't split faces or something like that. Sometimes it's not good to be too smart." The mysterious girl slowly sighed, but her hair couldn't automatically float up. Her body also floated up. Chapter 1565. The result of the choice was unknown. Yamanlana and the princess entered the door at the same time, one on the left and one on the right. There was no change, and everything returned to normal. But at this time, the mysterious girl showed an aura that made the red genie shrink its head even more. But this aura was not directed at the red genie, but at Otto. Otto bore the brunt of the horror that made his heart feel like it was going to explode at any time. His body seemed to be squeezed by something and lifted up, and at the same time his blood vessels began to swell, which was a strange phenomenon caused by the blood flowing at a very fast speed in his body. He even felt suffocated, and his legs were off the ground. A trace of panic flashed in the eyes of this immortal king. He might die in this place, and obviously he would not be reconciled, so he desperately urged the little chi in his body to make his throat enough to make a sound. He said hurriedly and quickly, "Genie, I know the whereabouts of that person." That person? Who was it? Among the people present, not many knew. The little handmaiden did not know, Ibn did not know, and the mysterious girl naturally did not know. This was the secret in the heart of the red genie, and one of the sources of its pain. That person, of course, it knew who Otto was talking about. For so many years, it had only told Otto about itself. As for Boss Luo, what a joke. That kind of guy, the red genie naturally would not put him in the category of ordinary people. Have you ever seen an ordinary person who could surpass the power of the genie? This person, you're not allowed to touch. The red genie changed. It was no longer the powerless figure that hid behind the little handmaiden, but became tall, ferocious, and crazy. Even if you're really a god, my power is as vast as the sea. The overwhelming power gushed out and pulled Mr. Otto, who was about to die, back from the brink of death, and even broke free from the restraint of the mysterious girl at this time. The mysterious girl stepped back slightly, and a trace of anger flashed in her eyes. After all, she was just an individual copied from the body in the coffin, and not the real goddess. She had a shred of divinity as a god, but she clearly did not have substantial divine power. After all, she had existed for too short a time, and the resources in Sun City were not enough for her divine power to be improved well. That was why she did not gain any advantage in a contest of pure power. The mysterious girl was helpless. Her situation was like that. She was strong on the outside, but weak on the inside. If the divinity could not suppress this monster, then it would be very troublesome. She needed to wait for Yamanlana to come out from the door, no matter which door it was, so she could not be forced to leave at this time. But at that moment, the enraged red genie suddenly hugged its head and screamed in pain. "You can't do this to me. You can't do this to me. You can't. I have fulfilled at least 500 wishes. You can't, you can't." It was furious, it screamed, and it even seemed to be pleading. Of course, chains came out from the genie, hanging on the little maid's waist, tied it up, and dragged it back little by little. What Aotawa said was not wrong. The genie of the genie in a magic lamp was indeed just a tool. The genie seemed to be powerful, but there was no way it could take the initiative to attack without the consent of the summoner. Attacking was tantamount to violating the internal rules of the genie, and it would be punished. It could be a more terrible burning flame, or it could be another punishment. Aota did not know what punishment was waiting for the genie because it had never mentioned too much about it. It had always been afraid of the punishment in the magic lamp, and had even been enduring part of the punishment. Because of this, the red genie looked so abnormal. Anyone who could be trapped in the magic lamp for thousands of years, or even longer, and then be burned by the fire would not be in good spirits. You can't. The red genie's body had been partially sucked into the genie, but it was still struggling, holding on tightly to the floor, and its fingers drew deep marks on the ground. Seeing this, the mysterious girl could not help but let out a sigh of relief. Whether fate was fair or not, fate seemed to be on her side at this moment. Genie of the lamp, please deal with this woman. I wish. At this moment, fate seemed to have played a joke on everyone once again. A weak and sobbing voice abruptly rang out, becoming a variable that no one had expected. The little maid, Elaine, who was now qualified to summon the genie, was a little maid in the palace of the City of the Sun. In an instant, the light on the surface of the magic lamp swirled, and the chains that trapped the red genie disappeared in an instant. Stupid woman, I said, without my permission, you can't make a second wish. The red genie who was freed glared at the little maid fiercely. Elaine's eyes turned red, and she almost burst into tears. She said sadly, But genie, you look like you are in pain. I will give you 500 wishes. The last wish, no matter what, you must keep it for me. Now, shut up, step back, and raise your spear. The red genie snorted and stood up step by step. How ironic. I am trapped because of a woman, and now, because of another woman, my opponent is also a woman. Facing the red genie, who suddenly became aggressive, the mysterious girl could not help but frown. But after all, she had divinity. Even if she was not as strong as the red genie, she was not completely afraid. At most, she was just worried about this variable. She shook her head and said, Are you really going to declare war on a god? Don't tell me you are just a god with divinity. The red genie spread out its hands at this time. Unlike how it always expanded its body to show its dignity, this time the red genie's body became thin and weak. As long as it is a wish acknowledged by the genie, even if you are a god, I will kill you. As soon as the red genie finished speaking, a gust of wind spread out from the red genie, and the strong wind instantly blew Mr. Otto into the wall again. He knew that the red genie did this on purpose. It had always been this stingy. The wind stopped. A barefoot young man in red armor with long black hair walked out of the wind. There was no doubt that this was the red genie's other appearance. It wasn't that sinister demon-like appearance. Instead, it was a delicate and handsome face that could be described as a peerless beauty. The little maid, Yalin, couldn't help but blush upon seeing it. This was the first time she had discovered that a man could actually be so good-looking. Unlike the little handmaiden who could not resist the beauty of the red genie, the mysterious girl was not affected at all. She looked at the red genie calmly and said, So, are you going to kill a god? A wish is a wish. The red genie, or rather, the man in red armor waved his hand, and a dark red energy suddenly appeared in his palm. It then elongated and became a spear emitting a red light. You? The mysterious girl shook her head. I was going to say that, but if I say that, it will make me sound like a villain. My predecessor was a goddess of justice. I don't care. The genie snorted. In my life, I like to beat up women the most. After that, the genie raised the red spear in his hand and stabbed it at the mysterious girl. The target was the girl's heart. I am so innocent. The mysterious girl did not know whether to laugh or cry. She could only dodge the genie's attack. After all, she was not as strong as the genie in terms of body and strength. She could only dodge. After all, this body was still immortal. However, the red genie who had received the wish did not have any scruples under the rule of the magic lamp. He attacked fiercely. With just one attack, the entire tomb shook. You bastard! What did you do in someone's tomb? Haven't you heard of the saying, The dead are respected? The mysterious girl was furious. Genie hit her. Hit her. The little handmaiden held the golden spear in her hand tightly. She did not intend to use it. She was just nervous. Or maybe she was a little excited. Children should not make a fuss here. The mysterious girl stared at the little handmaiden Elaine fiercely. The little handmaiden immediately shrank back. At this time, the red genie suddenly moved and stood between the little handmaiden Elaine and the mysterious girl. He snorted. Although this woman is stupid, only I can scold her. The little handmaiden was touched at first. Then, she shed tears. She still looked wronged. The genie did not care about this. He attacked again. The mysterious girl's divinity could not pressure the genie, who was supported by the rule of the magic lamp. At this time, it seemed that she could only be chased and beaten. Mr. Aoda got a chance to rest. His immortal body from the genie came into effect. Although his injuries were not healed immediately, he recovered a lot. At least, he could move. Mr. Aoda dragged his body to Siejiatu. Earlier, the deified Siejitu was beaten up by the genie and was almost dead. At this time, he was still dying. Have you ever thought that a god would be chased and beaten one day? Mr. Aoda covered his wounds and sat down in front of Siejiatu. He was waiting for someone to come out of the door. At the same time, he was also waiting. He kept looking at the door on the right. This was the door that Yamalana had entered. It was the door that Yamalana had entered. It was the door that she had almost been shot to death in the last secret room. Gods are just humans who died a little earlier. Siejiatu said weakly. The one in the coffin is the best proof. Gods can die, so it is not strange that they are chased and beaten. I saw the servers you hid in the statue, Mr. Aoda suddenly said in a low voice. Siejiatu said indifferently. So what? That is just one of the servers. There are many backups in Sun City. They are all connected. Even if you destroy the one in the statue, it does not matter. I have collected enough data. I changed my mind. Mr. Aoda suddenly smiled and said, You said that your invitation is still valid. I did not. Siejiatu replied coldly. He really did not say such a thing. Logically speaking, he should have said such a thing to make himself look decent. But he really did not say it. Mr. Aoda could not blackmail him. You don't want a whole plan to fail, do you? Mr. Aoda ignored him and stared at Siejiatu's eyes. You have come this far. If you fail, everything you have done before will be in vain. What do you want to say? Siejiatu was silent for a moment. I know that Pharaoh is also you, just like the girl who is being chased by the genie. They're all cultivated by you. Mr. Aoda's voice was lower. Siejiatu was silent. Mr. Aoda continued. You even dare to become like this yourself. It proves that you are in the last fight. I know you. I know you who was my companion in the desert. I know you. You will not do such an impulsive thing unless you have a reason to gamble. Do you still have some tricks up your sleeve? Don't say no. Libra was discovered by you. Sun City was built by you. Logically speaking, you can't be unprepared. Ha! Siejiatu laughed softly. What are you laughing at? This laughter made Mr. Aoda faintly feel uneasy. Some things did not seem to be as he thought. He suddenly felt a little irritable. Laughing that you were the smartest person I have ever seen, the craziest person cough. Siejiatu was still laughing softly. Mr. Aoda was expressionless, but he grabbed Siejiatu's neck with one hand. I will ask again, what are you laughing at? Nothing. What? There is no backup. Siejiatu said faintly at this time. Even if there is, you have already seen it. What do you mean? Mr. Aoda could not help but frown. At the same time, he quickly recalled the whole thing. He had already seen it? What was it? Had he forgotten? Siejiatu suddenly said, You have seen the process of how Pharaoh deified and mutated. You have already seen it, haven't you? Mr. Aoda was stunned. He had indeed seen it, the whole process. In his own bedroom, after Pharaoh dug out his left eye, he began to mutate, deify. As for the left eye, after Pharaoh dug it out, it mysteriously disappeared. Mr. Aoda did not know how it disappeared, at least the recording at that time did not record it. But there seemed to be someone who was there beside Pharaoh at that time. Could it be that you also... Mr. Ao suddenly thought of a possibility. If Pharaoh was deified because he dug out and handed over his left eye, then could it be that Siegeru was also deified because he handed over? At this time, Mr. Ao could not help but look down suspiciously. Seth dug out Horus' left eye, and Horus dug out Seth's. That place won't do. At this time, the mysterious girl suddenly said with a voice full of anger. Then, there seemed to be the sound of something breaking. A corner of the tomb, which had been destroyed by the genie, was like a ruin, and in this ruin, there was a metal door that was different from stone. Obviously, the door was hidden in the stone wall, but because the wall was completely destroyed, it was exposed. The genie obviously did not care about the girl's warning. At this time, he sneered and directly blew the metal door into pieces with a punch. Chapter 1566. Many Yamanas. What does many mean? It was as if a box of life-sized wooden puppets had suddenly been poured out of the container. There were dried bones, broken limbs, rolling heads, rotting bodies, dried corpses. There were also some that seemed to have died not long ago. God knows how long they had been dead. Naturally, it was impossible to tell what the skeletons looked like. However, among this large pile of skeletons, there were dozens of heads that looked like Yamalana. It was enough to make people think that everything here was Yamalana. How many are there? Mr. Otto was shocked when he saw this scene. There were few things that could surprise him. This metal room that was destroyed by the genie seemed to be one of them. Your Highness. Your Highness? This. The little maid was completely in a state of absent-mindedness. At the same time, she felt a creepy feeling. The genie stopped at this time and frowned slightly. He didn't know if it was an illusion, but he always felt that something seemed to have passed by him, and it brought a kind of familiar feeling, but he couldn't remember it. It was as if something had approached the pile of corpses. Everyone's attention was attracted by the exposed corpses. The mysterious girl's expression suddenly turned cold. She lowered her head slightly, and her hair blocked her line of sight. However, an even more dangerous feeling was emitted from her body. The genie could feel it, and his whole body suddenly became tense. No one paid attention to Ivan as a mortal. His sense of existence was probably the weakest among the crowd, not because they couldn't see Ivan's existence, but because Ivan was too ordinary and harmless to the people present. He couldn't affect anything, so no one paid attention to him. Since no one cared about this mortal, Ibn's next move didn't attract anyone's attention. Their eyes were still fixed on the exposed corpses of Yamanlana. It's too familiar, too familiar. Ivan thought silently in his heart. That kind of gaze of being ignored is too familiar. He was just an ordinary person, a person who couldn't affect anything, a guy who wouldn't be valued. Ivan had been used to this kind of gaze since a long time ago. Because he was used to it, he was sensitive, as if he had superhuman intuition. Ibn reached out and fished something out of the coffin. Because no one was paying attention to him, no one knew what he had scooped out of the coffin, or rather, what he had scooped out of the goddess corpse. Perhaps the mysterious girl will know when she carefully examines the goddess body in the coffin. No wonder you didn't need me to kill the princess to determine who is the real one. Now it seems that they are both real people. Lamp God sighed softly. It was not really reckless, but most of the time, it was too lazy to use its brain. Magic could help it solve many things that required it to use its brain. Gradually, it became not fond of thinking, but that did not mean that it did not know how to think. Before it became the Lamp God, it was once a prince of a country and the pride of the kingdom. It was no different from Princess Yamalana in the hearts of the people of the City of the Sun. The mysterious girl did not speak. She did not raise her head, but the dangerous aura that she brought to Genie was getting stronger and stronger. Genie said slowly, "I don't know about your so-called method of creating a vessel. I've never even heard of it. But now it seemed that a body made of sand couldn't become a vessel, right? Are these all the dead vessels? How many times have you experimented?" Definitely more than once. Otto had always thought that this was the last choice. Whether it failed or not depended on luck and fate. Now, it seemed that this was not the case. This result might have happened many times. Many, Yamalana, eventually came here and walked in the door but they failed. That was why the mysterious girl said that the door on the right was just a possibility. Just count and you'll know. Stupid. The mysterious girl suddenly raised her head and revealed a faint smile. Genie turned back and glanced at the corpses. Of course, he would not count them carefully. This action was a trick to make the girl relax her guard. The moment he turned back, Genie attacked again, but the mysterious girl seemed to have expected it. The girl easily dodged. She was not as embarrassed as before. It was easy. Genie couldn't help but feel that something seemed to be wrong. The girl smiled and said, "After all, I used to be the goddess of justice. The goddess of justice, of course, I will fight against evil. Isn't it normal that my skills will become better?" Genie's answer was believe it or not. He felt that the mysterious girl's power suddenly increased. It was not the increase of the horrifying aura, but the increase of her strength just now. The mysterious girl smiled and said, "It seems that after so many experiments, there is finally a successful one." After that, the mysterious girl looked at the two doors. She saw that in the light of the door on the right, a figure gradually appeared. His breath suddenly stopped. The one who entered the door on the right was Yamalana, and the princess was thrown into the door on the left by Yamalana. Time passed by slowly. When Yamalana appeared in front of everyone, Otto suddenly felt that the dust had settled. But this feeling quickly disappeared, and it was replaced by a deep suspicion. He was a very suspicious person. Yamalana walked out from the door on the right, and there was even a strange dark red mark on her forehead. Before she entered, she didn't have it. This might be the mark of becoming a vessel. Maybe. At least in the pair of corpses, the faces that could be vaguely seen didn't have this mark. It was the mark of a feather, an ostrich's feather. A pair of open feathers, like the mark of a wing. The feather of an ostrich was generally regarded as the mark of the goddess of justice and truth, Mat. In ancient Egyptian mythology, the feather of Mat was the weight on the scale, which was used to weigh the heart of the dead. Success. The mysterious girl made a happy sound at this time, and her smile was also bright. So many years of waiting. Genie suddenly felt that something was wrong. The great danger that it felt before entering the oasis came again. But this time, it needed to fulfill the little maid's wish. Under the coercion of the magic lamp, it couldn't say anything like leaving quickly. "Your Highness! Your Highness!" Yalin saw Yamalana at this time, and she didn't care so much. She directly walked forward. She didn't know which one was the real one, and she didn't know why there were so many corpses, but the one in front of her was alive. It was fine as long as it was Her Highness. "Your Highness, you're fine." "Great." The little maid rushed to Yamalana and was about to reach out and hug her. "You scared me. Be careful." Genie suddenly screamed at this time, and at the same time, he turned into a red whirlwind, rolling up. Yalin didn't react immediately, and she only felt a huge force suddenly pushed her away. The golden armor that was given by Genie didn't seem to be able to resist it. Her mind was blank when she was flying backward, until something hugged her tightly from behind. It was Genie. After landing safely, the little maid's face was faintly pale, and she asked in horror, "Your Highness?" "I'm Yalin." "Your Highness?" Yamalana obviously could hear it, and she looked at the little maid. Yalin had never seen this kind of look from Her Highness since she was a child. It was so strange that she was scared. At this time, Yamalana slowly stretched out her hand and grabbed something toward Genie. Genie's huge magical power was immediately restrained, and at the same time, it was directly suppressed by a huge, invisible force. Genie couldn't help but be shocked. It was divine power with a strong divinity. Compared with it, the divinity of the mysterious girl was just like the light of a firefly. Genie was shocked, and he vaguely felt the fear of death. His intuition told him that even he would die outside the magic lamp. Yamalana, who became a vessel, was a special individual that was beyond his understanding. "Your Highness! Your Highness, what's wrong with you?" "Your Highness!" At this time, the mysterious girl walked past Yalin and said with a smile, "Don't shout anymore. She is no longer the Princess Yamalana you know. Her soul has been completed, and it perfectly accommodates its soul. It. Mr. Otto took a deep breath. He knew this. Siejiru told him that this was the remnant soul in the scales of good and evil. Because it was broken, it needed to be repaired easily. Vessel could not repair it. Is the goddess of justice? Mr. Otto frowned. No, the goddess of justice is sealed in the sarcophagus. According to what you said, the goddess of justice was plotted by her sister, the goddess of truth. I don't believe that the goddess of truth would keep her soul. You are the clone of the goddess of justice, and you inherited part of the memory of the goddess of justice. Who is it? Guess. The mysterious girl smiled at this time, and her body suddenly disappeared. When she reappeared, she was already behind Mr. Otto, sticking her head out from the back of his head. Hint: only the goddess of justice knows about the goddess of justice. Mr. Otto subconsciously slashed with his black knife, but the mysterious girl became lighter than a speck of dust. When the black knife slashed, the flowing air had already pushed her away, or she floated away by herself. This time, the mysterious girl's body disappeared again. When she appeared again, she was already beside Yamanlana. She stretched out her hand from behind and gently hugged Yamanlana, reaching out her hand and stroking her cheek. Only the goddess of justice knows about the goddess of justice. Mr. Otto took a deep breath and frowned. You are the goddess of truth? The corpse of the goddess of truth is in the sarcophagus? The mysterious girl shook her head and then smiled. Wrong answer. As a punishment, I will take off one of your eyes. The mysterious girl slightly crooked her finger, and Mr. Otto suddenly groaned. The little maid Yaman hurriedly looked over, only to see Mr. Otto covering his right eye. His face was bleeding profusely. At the same time, an eyeball appeared in the mysterious girl's palm. She squeezed it, and it exploded without any hesitation. You are really a guy who has been through a lot. You can actually remain calm. The mysterious girl praised. I have seen the information of Xie Jitu's interrogation of you. You are more suitable to be a king than Pharaoh. In the new world, you will be a king. But Mr. Otto just muttered to himself, not the goddess of truth, not the goddess of justice. Who is it? He seemed to be in a dead end, and he didn't care about losing his right eye at all. He didn't even care about the blood gushing out. It is the will of Tian Cheng. A sigh sounded faintly. That was Xie Jiatu's voice. The voice of the deified Xie Jiatu with a jackal head and a human body. He slowly stood up, and he looked so weak that he would fall down again at any time. But he still stood up despite being so weak. Tian Cheng. Mr. Otto suddenly looked over. At this time, Xie Jiatu was just looking at Yamanlana and the mysterious girl on the stairs. The will of Tian Cheng. A long time ago, Tian Cheng belonged to the goddess of justice and truth, Matt. At that time, when the goddess of justice and truth were still separated, they shared. Tian Cheng will naturally know about the two goddesses. Tian Cheng. Tian Cheng. Tian Cheng. Mr. Otto suddenly seemed to have figured something out. I see. I understand now. I understand what you want. Oh, the mysterious girl. The will of Tian Cheng looked at this immortal king with interest, as if she wanted to know what he understood. Mr. Otto put down his hand that was covering the wound on his right eye. His right eye really disappeared, but the wound on his right eye had stopped bleeding. Mr. Otto's face was very pale at this time. What you want is freedom, to control yourself. Yamanlana is a vessel that perfectly contains the remnant soul of the goddess, and at the same time, she is your tool. The will of Tian Cheng suddenly narrowed his eyes and asked curiously, That's right. How'd you guess it? Mr. Aota glanced at Jeannie, who was not far away, and then said calmly, Because a long time ago, I knew an idiot who wanted to obtain the power of the artifact but was imprisoned by it. Otto, who are you calling an idiot? The lamp god roared angrily at this time. His hair was messy, and his face was ferocious again. Yalan opened her mouth and suddenly felt that the lamp god was not handsome anymore. In the deepest part of the room, filled with skeletons, a corpse that was more than half shriveled was quietly leaning against the wall in a sitting position. There were many bones on top of the corpses. Only you were left. It was the voice of Boss Luo. Chapter 1567. The eyes on the corpse's face had disappeared, leaving only two dark holes. Boss Luo stretched out his hand and gently swiped his palm to the left. The pile of corpses on the corpse was gently moved to the side by an invisible force. Then he continued to swipe his palm to the right, and so did the corpses on the other side. After these corpses were separated, they were not piled up randomly. They even began to sort themselves little by little, or each of them found their own parts. As a result, the corpses hidden in this secret room began to reorganize into their original form. Of course, they were still corpses, but they were no longer scattered. Even though the bones were still bones, the dried corpses were still dried corpses. They stood in two rows, and there was strength to support their corpses so that they would not fall. A faint light began to spread in this secret room. Gradually, a grayish-white fog began to appear, but it was only a trace, very faint, very faint. These were the failed vessels in the past, and they were buried in the end or abandoned in this place. Boss Luo could easily feel the resentment emitted from these corpses, but most of them were just pure resentment. They did not even have the slightest consciousness. Only the corpse in front of him, who sat down and leaned against the wall, buried among the corpses, still had some remnant, resentment. But other than resentment, there was something else. It was like a flame that was about to be extinguished in the wind and snow, but someone, perhaps it was herself, was using her body and hands to carefully protect this tiny flame in the wind and snow. It might be extinguished soon. If Boss Luo did not come here, perhaps it would not take long, half a day, a few hours, or even the next second. Just like this, Boss Luo squatted in front of the corpse that still had some remnants and looked at it, her empty eye socket. This was given to you by your father. It gave you thoughts and beliefs. As he spoke, the boss opened his palm, and a golden eyeball floated out from his palm. Horus's left eye, this was something that Pharaoh dug out personally. The golden eyeball flew out from Boss Luo's palm. It immediately flew into the corpse's left eye socket. The golden eyeball embedded itself in her left eye socket and quickly fused with her body. In the next moment, Boss Luo stretched out his other hand and opened it. A sphere bathed in golden light appeared. After that, the sphere bathed in golden light slowly flew to the corpse's abdomen and entered it. This was also given to you by your father. It gave you life and strength. After he finished speaking, the half-dried corpse that was buried here slowly floated up. Her body began to swell little by little. Her withered body was like earth that had received the nourishment of clear water. His blood vessels began to throb, and so did his chest. That was the rhythm of life. The mist in the secret room was being absorbed by her bit by bit, along with her breathing. Finally, her body returned to the appearance of an adult. It was the appearance of Yamanlana that Luochio was familiar with. Or perhaps Claudia. She probably used these two identities in the past, or maybe she had other identities. She opened her eyes. The remnant of the resentment and the memory of Pharaoh in Horus's left eye easily merged perfectly with Boss Luo's ability. It doesn't matter if you don't know who I am. Boss Luo said softly at this time. You are now reborn to fulfill Pharaoh's wish. Of course, the high priest also has a part in it. You are their common daughter. All their love and expectations have been given to you. Father, Boss Luo said softly, Your Highness, the mysterious girl, Tian Changzhou was not interested in investigating whether the idiot that Otto mentioned was the red genie of lamp. She was actually not very interested in the genie of lamp. Maybe the genie of lamp could be, after all, it should be considered as a divine artifact. The deified Siejatu was on the verge of collapsing, but on the other side, the deified pharaoh of the kingdom slowly got up. The dying pharaoh still looked terrible at this time, but he did not seem to be very close to death. He suddenly flapped the flesh wings behind his back and landed beside Siejatu. When the two of them stood together, they couldn't help but have a strange feeling. The images they had deified were old enemies in the past, hostile gods who had a life-and-death feud with each other. Tian Cheng's will could not help but blink curiously and open her mouth in surprise. Hey, you are awake? Pharaoh and Siejidu looked at each other. Pharaoh did not speak, but Siejidu slowly said, "No, we have not been awake." Huh? Siejidu sighed and said, "It is because we have not been awake that we have been, for an illusory wish, we have been moving forward until now." You have been acting all along? Tian Cheng's will frowned and asked curiously, When Yamanlana's mother died. Siejidu took a deep breath and said, "We have created many Yamanlana, but only this generation of Yamanlana was cultivated through conception." Pharaoh loved Yamanlana's mother deeply, and some changes beyond the data collected over the years began from the death of Yamanlana's mother. Tian Cheng's will was silent, and no one knew what it was thinking. At this time, Siejidu said in a deep voice, "Perhaps without the death of Yamanlana's mother, I would still be indulging in everything you have created. I would still be the Siejidu who thought that I was possessed by the evil thoughts left by Seth and induced the desire in my heart." Tian Cheng's will sneered, "Everything about you is under my surveillance. Since you have woken up, you can't hide from me. Is that so?" Siejidu shook his head. "Yes, in Sun City, there is a surveillance system that I have set up. I can see everything that happens here. And so, can you? If I am the eyes behind Sun City, then you are the eyes behind me. But there's a place that you will never be able to see, as long as you are always in Sun City." Outside, Tian Cheng's will thought of something and then realized, "You." Siejidu glanced at Pharaoh beside him and said indifferently, "Sometimes it's me, sometimes it's him. Sometimes it's Claudia, sometimes it's Yamanlana. They're all our daughters, and we are all their fathers. Everything that happens on the outside that you can't see creates the perfect vessel. Isn't the result the same?" Tian Cheng's will smiled slightly. "Thank you. It seems that I should have woken you up earlier. This way, I wouldn't have failed so many times. It seems that I am still too conservative. The result won't be the same." The one who said this was not Siejidu, but the pharaoh of the kingdom. At this time, the wings behind him spread out, and his eyes flashed with anger, "Because you will disappear, and Yamanlana will perfectly control the power of Tian Cheng. She will not be controlled by anyone, even you, the original will of Tian Cheng. With just the two of you?" Tian Cheng's will seemed to have heard a funny joke at this time. Two things whose source of power has been dug out are not human and are not monsters anymore. How stupid. Do you really think that you can live and have power after being deified? I have to tell you a very sad fact. The guy you asked for help and the thing behind him, I am afraid that he is the most black-hearted existence since the beginning of the world. The source of power of Horus, user, Seth, should be the thing that you handed over. The funny thing is, you actually gave away your real power in exchange for this so-called deification. Tian Cheng's will shook his head. "You are putting the cart before the horse. How can you deal with me?" After that, Tian Cheng's will waved his hand, and the void lit up. A scale that was shining with golden light slowly appeared in front of everyone at this time. Yamanlana, who was held by Tian Cheng's will, slowly stretched out her hands and took the good and evil scale into her hands. At this time, Tian Cheng's will whispered in Yamanlana's ear, "My master, do you see the evil in this world? Your justice is being blasphemed by the mortals. Judge, use me to judge these ignorant and ugly people who are controlled by their desires." Yamanlana instantly raised the scale in her hand, and a golden light shot out, instantly piercing through the ground. Then, the whole underground river began to boil. Yamanlana held the scale in her hand and directly flew out of the hole that pierced through the ground. Seeing this, SBHYNX Cat and Siejidu did not hesitate at all. They both roared and followed up. After that, the tomb began to collapse, and large pieces of stone fell down. Seeing this, the red lamp god quickly blew out a breath, and the curtain that turned into rags after it fell to the ground flew up again and immediately rolled up the panicked maid Yalin. Seeing this, Mr. Otto and Ibn directly reached out and grabbed the tail of the curtain, not letting go no matter what. "Otto, you bastard, get down." Seeing this, Genie raised his foot to kick Mr. Otto. However, when he remembered that Mr. Otto knew the whereabouts of that person, he had no choice but to stop. He could not kick Mr. Otto, nor could he not kick him. It did not know when it started to be easily played by this bastard Otto. At the beginning, this guy was a very innocent young man, right? "Your Highness." While the lamp god was having a stomachache, the little maid Yalin suddenly jumped down from the curtain and ran to the light door on the left. Seeing this, the lamp god cursed in his heart and had to control the curtain to follow her. The little maid who was wearing the golden armor could not use the power of the golden armor, but her physical strength was greatly increased, and in the blink of an eye, she had already rushed to the light door on the left. Unexpectedly, when she just arrived at the light door on the left, the light on the light door on the left disappeared. Yalin poked her head in without thinking, only to see a small stone chamber behind the light door on the left. It was a small space with a length and width of less than 2 meters. There was nothing here, and the princess who was thrown in by Yamarana was now unconscious on the ground. Yalin did not care about this. She reached out and pulled the princess out, jumping onto the curtain. Seeing that this place was about to collapse, the lamp god commanded the curtain and hurriedly got out of the hole that was pierced by the golden light. The cave collapsed, but before it collapsed, a figure suddenly flew out of the secret chamber filled with corpses. Soon, this figure also left through the hole. In the end, a huge stone fell and completely buried this tomb chamber. Before it was buried, the sarcophagus in the tomb chamber disappeared after a flash of light. The flying curtain took everyone out of the dark underground space and returned to the square where the miniature temple was located. The lamp god did not go to Otto anymore because the little maid who was annoyed turned around and glared at him, scolding him. The lamp god did not say anything. This once again proved how afraid this insufferably arrogant genie was of women. God knows what kind of psychological trauma this genie had experienced from the previous genie, who was also his teacher's lover. "Your Highness, Your Highness? Wake up, Your Highness?" The princess who was rescued from the light door on the left was the princess. At this moment, under the shaking of the little maid, her eyes moved slightly, and she slowly opened her eyes. The princess who opened her eyes had a trace of confusion in them. Seeing this, Mr. Otto stepped forward. "Who are you now? Claudia? Yamarana?" The will of Libra said that if she chose the light door on the left, she would be free. Siegetu also told her to choose the light door on the left. At this time, the princess's eyes brightened a little, but she shook her head and said nothing. She just got out of Yalin's arms, stood up, and looked forward. What happened? As you can see, Mr. Otto still stared at the princess at this time. The high priest, who has always been the villain and the pharaoh of the kingdom, have planned a drastic plan. Now, they are fighting with the will of Libra, who has revealed its true face, hoping to destroy the will of Libra. In addition, the girl who was transformed by the will of Libra is your mother, you know? My mother is not her. The princess glanced at Mr. Otto indifferently and then looked at the little maid. After a moment of silence, she said, "Yalin, this is my first request. My father and adoptive father are on the light door. Can you help me save them?" "Your Highness, it's my pleasure." The little maid quickly wiped the tears in her eyes and nodded heavily. At this time, the lamp god couldn't help but sigh. He didn't know what was wrong with this summoner's head, but in fact, he knew that if it wasn't this kind of person who only cared about others, he wouldn't be able to get the response from the magic lamp. This was the first time the red genie of the 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 genie. Bah, what the hell? Mr. Lamp God, don't be in a daze. If I die, I die. The lamp god shouted a few words and forced himself to rush forward. At this time, it didn't only have to face Yamarana, who was holding the golden scale, and the girl who was transformed by the will of Libra, but it also had to face the statue of the goddess that was activated by the power of the Libra. That's right, The huge statue of the goddess that was exposed after the outer wall fell off was now alive. Chapter 1568. Yamanana's lower body was completely embedded in the head of the goddess statue, and her hands were still holding the scales of good and evil. The will of Libra sat on the shoulder of the goddess statue and looked around leisurely. The deified Sieju, the deified pharaoh, and the unwilling genie were all staring at each other. No one made the first move. The deified Sieju and the deified pharaoh looked at each other and nodded. Sieju looked at the genie and said in a deep voice, "Libra belongs to the goddess, and the goddess soul controls everything in Libra. But for some reason, the goddess is only a remnant soul and has no active consciousness. But even so, the goddess is still the master of Libra. The will of Libra can't resist the will of the goddess." So the will of Libra came up with this idea. Since it can't get rid of the control of the goddess, then it can control the goddess. Do you understand? The genie's eyes were sometimes serious and sometimes bright, and then he said seriously, "I don't understand." Sieju was silent for a moment. "Our enemy is not Yamanana, nor the goddess statue, but the will of Libra. Destroy her current body. Over the years, it has tasted the feeling of having a body, and it has completely merged with this body. So killing her is equivalent to beating the will of Libra back to its original form." "Tell me earlier." "I understand." The genie nodded, and the fire on his body suddenly turned into a raging flame and rushed toward the will of Libra. Unexpectedly, the goddess statue raised her hand, and such a huge statue had a very agile reaction, and it slapped the flame that the genie turned into. The deified pharaoh shook his head at this time. "Let's rely on ourselves." Sieju didn't say anything, and after nodding, he and the deified pharaoh moved together, and each of them rushed toward the goddess statue in two different directions. The will of Libra seemed to be sitting casually on the shoulder of the goddess statue, but this goddess statue was created by Sieju under the influence of the will of Libra over the past few hundred years. He used a technique that even he couldn't describe. It seemed to be a kind of pottery technique from the ancient Egyptian civilization. Using Yamlana, who is now a vessel, as a medium, he connected the power of the scales of good and evil with the statue of the goddess and made the statue come to life. At this time, the goddess statue's hands kept waving. The hair behind the statue's head was like a giant mud snake. Sometimes it turned into a big net, and sometimes it turned into hundreds of tentacles to attack. The deified Sieju and the pharaoh of the kingdom couldn't get close at all. After a few rounds, just like Genie, Sieju, and SBHYNX Cat were swept to the ground, they were already severely injured, and after they fell to the ground and vomited blood, they could not get up. The genie, on the other hand, had a strong body. He recovered in an instant after being slammed into the ground. However, the hair of the goddess statue turned into spears and shot out, nailing the genie's body to the square in an instant. This is divine power. If it was just a normal spear, it wouldn't have hurt at all. However, these spears were all covered in divine power, and it caused the genie to twitch in pain. If it wasn't for its dignity, it would have screamed, "It hurts!" SBHYNX Cat and Sieju were powerless, and they struggled to stand up. The will of Libra looked down at them and said with a smile, "Sometimes it is better to not be awake. How do you know that I won't fulfill your wish?" Most of the power of Libra comes from the judgment of humans. The more humans it judges, the more powerful it will be. You want a world without sorrow, and Libra needs to judge humans to increase its power. There is no conflict between these two. Sieju, since you found Libra in the oasis, I have been with you for more than 600 years. Don't you have any feelings for me? I will be very sad if you do." Sieju frowned. The will of Libra looked at the deified pharaoh and said softly, "Look at me. I am your wife. King, Yamlana is our child. Have you forgotten your feelings for me?" The pharaoh of the kingdom sneered. 10 years ago, I killed the person I love the most. If you love me, just like 10 years ago, stand in front of me and let me kill you." What a cold-hearted person. The will of Libra sighed sadly, and then stood up, stubborn. Since this is the case, you will also accept the judgment of Libra. In your dreams, you will witness the world that you have been waiting for. This is the only thing that I can give you. As it said that, the will of Libra waved its hand, and the eyes of the goddess statue suddenly lit up. Two rays of light instantly shot towards SBHYNX cat and Siejiatu. They could not avoid it, but at the last moment, a figure flashed and came to the side of SBHYNX cat and Siejiatu, taking them away. The two rays of light did not hit them. The will of Libra frowned and looked up. Right in front of her, there was a person holding SBHYNX cat and Siejiatu. It was a face that she was familiar with. You? The will of Libra looked at the familiar face in disbelief. Subconsciously, it looked down and saw that the princess was still standing on the flying curtain. She then looked at the statue of the goddess. Yamanlana was still the link between the statue and the scale. The third one, when did? The person who took SBHYNX cat and Siejiatu away was also Yamlana. Princess Yamlana. Princess. Another princess. The little maid Yelaine subconsciously covered her mouth at this time, and her face was filled with disbelief. Seeing this, the lamp god looked at the little maid angrily and said, "You can only choose one at most." God knows why this lamp god was still thinking about the first wish. Yelaine did not have time to care. She looked at the princess who was saved from the light door on the left and said in a low voice, "Your Highness, my mind is a bit messed up. Am I dreaming?" The princess smiled at her and said softly, "If you are scared, close your eyes. When the sun rises, all the bad things will disappear with the sun." Oh, the little maid heard this and closed her eyes obediently. After that, Her Royal Highness looked up silently. Mr. Aota was watching her from behind. His eyes flashed as if he was thinking about something. He felt that the princess who was saved from the light door on the left was a bit different. At this time, the third Yamlana in the sky moved. She let go of SBHYNX cat and Siejiatu, and at the same time, she patted their backs lightly. Their injuries seemed to have started to recover. The third Yamlana's left eye was golden, and there was light flowing around her body, but it was not blinding. It was like the sun, and it instantly lit up the surroundings. This is the godly power of Horus. The will of Libra frowned and stared at the third Yamlana's left eye, and its eyes lit up. "The left eye is on you?" As soon as it finished speaking, the mysterious square instantly shattered into tiny sand. It was like a small desert. Countless sand floated and gathered into a huge hand, and it directly grabbed the statue of the goddess. She even has the power of Seth. The will of Libra was slightly shocked. At this time, it felt the power of Horus and Seth at the same time from the third Yamlana. The eagle god Horus and the desert lord Seth were mortal enemies, but their powers could hit one person without any conflicts. This was completely beyond the will of Libra's imagination. However, she quickly thought of a possibility to fuse these two powers that were like water and fire together without any disorder. The will of Libra suddenly looked at Siejedu and SBHYNX cat and said in a deep voice, "This is what you bought. The power to end everything." The SBHYNX cat did not seem to hear the voice of the will of Libra, and he just looked at the third Yamlana silently. "So, it is in this form, Yamlana." The third Yamlana gently turned around and looked at the SBHYNX cat. She gently touched her left eye and said expressionlessly, "I've been dead for a long time, and even I don't know how many failures I have. It was you and the high priest who gave me the chance to come back, so you don't have to feel sad. I only have one goal, to end everything." The SBHYNX cat nodded. At this time, Siejedu suddenly said, "You just need to kill the will of Libra." The third Yamlana looked at Siejedu deeply and then nodded. She opened her hands, and flames appeared on her hands and condensed into two flaming swords. At this time, she said loudly, "Father, I have been fighting against the giant beasts since I was young, and every time I came back victorious, You were always waiting for me in the palace. This time, how about you go to this battlefield with me? What can I do for you, my daughter? The deified SBHYNX cat said loudly. What can I do for you? What I can do for you is to go to this final battlefield with you. My daughter, I am the king of the city of the sun. You are my only and proudest princess. I can do everything for you. The SBHYNX cat's body instantly emitted a blazing white light. It was not as bright as the third Yamlana, but it was all he had. He was burning his own life. The third Yamlana and the deified SBHYNX cat were like two suns, one big and one small. The light and heat instantly evaporated the water around them. When the sun fell, it would burn everything. The hair on the goddess statue was broken, but under the control of the will of Libra, it tried to destroy the two suns with its hands. If the real Horus and Seth came, the will of Libra screamed at this time, unfortunately, they are not. I am the scales of good and evil, the most powerful artifact in ancient Egypt. Boom! When the goddess statue touched the two suns, a loud sound was heard. The goddess statue caught the two suns with both hands at the same time. You can't defeat me. The will of Libra gritted its teeth, and its black hair stood up. Blood vessels appeared on its face, and its eyes were red. Me too. It was Siegetu's voice. The deified Siegetu also rushed to the sky at this time, and his body burst out a dazzling light. The third sun, on the flying curtain, Ivan struggled to open his eyes, but he could only open them slightly to look at the third sun rising. Beside him, Mr. Otto said in a deep voice, Seth used to be the sun god. Ivan opened his mouth, and he felt that this night watcher seemed to know everything. But at this time, the earth suddenly shook violently. She pushed them back. When the suns that Siedu turned into also hit the goddess statue, blood began to ooze out of the pores on the body of the will of Libra. However, the goddess statue was pushing the three suns back little by little. This scene was no longer something that could be done by humans or affected by anything. Probably. Mr. Otto suddenly turned his palm, and a flying knife hidden in his sleeve suddenly shot out. The flying knife didn't shoot at the enemy, the will of Libra, but at the genie, who was stunned on the side. The sharp flying knife was infused with Mr. Otto's energy, and it directly stabbed into the genie's butt. The genie, who had just escaped from a spear, glared at Mr. Otto. Don't just stand there, idiot. Do it. Mr. Otto shouted coldly. Do you still want to know about that person? The genie instantly shivered, gritted his teeth, and suddenly turned into a flaming whirlwind, rolling toward the goddess statue. If the three of them are not enough, then add me. The raging fire completely covered the goddess statue, and the three suns that were pushed back, at this time, pressed down on the goddess statue again. The will of Libra didn't expect that the third Yamanlana, who had fused the power of Horus and Seth, would be so powerful. Coupled with the burning of Sietjatu and the pharaoh of mythology, it had been forced into a desperate situation. But now, in this desperate situation, the genie actually came to help. The originally barely balanced situation was suddenly broken, and the three dazzling suns were about to swallow it up. The will of Libra was furious, and at this time, tears of blood flowed out of her red eyes. If her body was destroyed, her will would be scattered, and she would become a muddle-headed will again. Then, she could only serve as the command program of the good and evil Libra, which was something she couldn't bear. If that's the case, then together, the will of Libra screamed at this time, and its body burst out a horrible light. But at this time, a gunshot suddenly sounded. On the flying curtain, the princess raised her hand at this time, and with a snap of her fingers, a bullet went through everything and directly went into the forehead of the will of Libra. Chapter 1569. It was like a ray of light piercing through the darkness. But in fact, under the illumination of the three suns, the light was so bright that people had to squint their eyes. In the center of the forehead of the will of Libra, blood started to flow out of the small hole. The blood flowed down the forehead and slowly separated on the bridge of the nose. Finally, the blood gathered at the chin of this delicate face. It dripped down. It was still red. The eyes of the will of Libra widened, as if it was asking something. Why? The girl's body fell from the shoulder of the goddess statue under everyone's confused and shocked gaze. At the same time, the arms of the goddess statue instantly shattered. The three sons of Pharaoh, Jetu, and Manlana, finally swallowed the entire goddess statue. Then, the light swallowed everything here, turning the world into pure white. It was not that there was no dust, but there was no dust to be seen. After the extreme white, there was darkness. The sight that slowly recovered was dim at first. It needed some time to adapt. The square was filled with a mixture of broken stones and sand, and dust filled the air. The statue of the goddess had completely collapsed. Only the head was intact, but half of it was buried in the sand. A human head poked out from the sand and stones, spitting out a mouthful of sand and dust. It was Ibn. He struggled to crawl out from the sand like a groundhog. He successfully crawled out and looked around, but he didn't see anyone. Ibn turned pale with fright and called out to the others. In the end, he found the night watcher, Mr. Otto, in front of the head of the goddess statue. He also found the princess who fired the last shot, the little maid Elaine, and the flying curtain. The genie had returned, and he looked very tired, leaning on a rock weakly. Is it over? Ibn quickly walked in front of the genie and asked carefully. Mr. Otto shook his head and looked up at the sky. In the sky, a bright light ball was slowly descending. It was Manlana, Pharaoh, and Siegetu. Pharaoh and Siegetu had lost their ability to move, and they were only supported by Manlana's power. They were gently placed on the soft sand. Manlana lowered her head and glanced at SBHYNX cat. Then, she glanced at Siegetu. Finally, she raised her head and stared at SBHYNX cat. Everyone followed third Amonlana's line of sight and saw a figure suddenly rushing out from the sand. It was the will of Libra. The will of Libra had many wounds all over her body, but the most eye-catching one was still the gunshot wound on her forehead. Her right leg was broken, and her left hand was missing as well. Like a banshee who had revealed her true face, her cute face was no longer there, and a crazed look appeared. She dragged her broken leg and moved forward step by step. Her right hand reached towards the third Yamana as if she wanted to grab her. The ground was filled with the marks she left behind as she moved forward. Seeing that Libra's will was still alive, Ivan was so scared that he quickly hid behind Mr. Otto. The genie of Lamp, who was sitting on the ground, frowned and stood up. But Mr. Otto stretched out his hand and said, "Wait." The will of Libra didn't care about the others. It dragged its body and walked straight towards Yamanlana. It was slow, but it was very straight. She took a few steps forward and suddenly fell to the ground. She continued to crawl and finally succeeded in reaching the third Yamana. But she was too weak to get up. She just grabbed the third Yamana's leg tightly. Then, her tight fingers gradually loosened. The will of Libra's face was finally buried in the sand and didn't move for a long time. What a terrifying obsession. Mr. Ao Tua sighed slowly. In his long life, he had seen a lot of similar things. Just like those soldiers on the battlefield who were obviously dead, but still relied on weapons to support their bodies. Of course, the will of Libra couldn't be compared with those soldiers on the battlefield, whether it was in terms of existence or purpose. But this obsession still moved Mr. Otto. Will she suddenly get up again? Ibn swallowed his saliva and said with a trembling voice, "Should we stab her a few more times to be safe? She is already dead. There is no need to insult her body." Hearing that, the third Yamana coldly glanced at Ibn. Her golden left eye flashed, full of majesty. At this time, a silver-white light slowly floated out from the girl's back. When Yamanana saw this, she reached out her hand and grabbed the light. She looked up at the forehead of the goddess statue. There, Yamanana's body was still embedded in the statue. However, she had already fainted, but her hands were still holding the scales of good and evil. The third Yamana waved her hand and directly shattered the head of the goddess statue. Yamana's body slowly floated down and lay down next to the will of Libra. The third Yamana reached out her hand again. The scales of good and evil fell from Yamana's hands and flew into her hands. Mr. Otto frowned at this moment. It seemed like he wanted to say something, but he could only stay silent. Only the princess was walking toward third Amanlana with a pistol in her hand. What will happen next? Everyone couldn't help but feel anxious. Although the will of Libra was dealt with, the scales of good and evil fell into the hands of the third Yamana. And now the princess was walking towards her. It seemed like the matter between them was not over yet. The princess finally came to the front of the third Yamana. She stared at her and slowly said, "If I look at her, I feel like I'm standing in front of a mirror. But when I stand here, what I see is a stranger." The third Yamana said indifferently, "Because you and she are using two similar models. As for me, I'm a different model. My life is different from most of those who have died." What are we? The princess asked in a low voice. "The division of good and evil. It is only the division of good and evil, but why are there so many of us?" The third Yamana sighed and said, "Although the division of good and evil is no different from humans, it is just sand after all. If your mother turned into sand, how could she give birth to you?" The princess's pupils contracted slightly. She lowered her head and didn't say anything. The answer faintly appeared in her heart. The third Yamana directly revealed the answer. The will of Libra was cultivated by the goddess genes, so are we. It's just that we have Siejiatu's genes in our bodies. So strictly speaking, we are indeed his daughters. The first one? The princess frowned. The third Yamana sighed and said, "She died in the first vessel inheritance. The earliest body there is her. But her gene sample is still there, and there's a place at the bottom of the tomb that is used to cultivate us. You and I are just the first batch." The princess smiled. It was a very funny and sad smile. She looked at Siejidu on the ground and said with a bitter smile, "In the end, he still succeeded. This man." That was indeed the case. The will of Libra had been destroyed, and the rebellious thoughts that were born from the good and evil Libra had been destroyed. Only the original will of the good and evil Libra was left. Yamlana had the power of both Horus and Seth. Not only did she defeat the perfect vessel, Yamlana, she had also obtained the good and evil Libra. "What do you plan to do?" The princess was silent for a moment. "Do you want to fulfill this man's wish to create a world without sorrow?" This was what Siejiatu wanted. The princess didn't believe that this wish was fabricated by the will of Libra. When were humans the easiest to be tempted? When there was obsession in people's hearts, they were the easiest to be tempted. He might have thought about it before, and that was why under the influence of the will of Libra, the image of Seth appeared. All of this should end. The third Yamana looked at the princess deeply. The power of the Libra doesn't belong to humans. It's unrealistic to try to use it to eliminate the sorrow in the world. It should be sealed forever or even destroyed. The fate of humans shouldn't be controlled by the hands of God. The princess was stunned. She looked at the third Yamana and opened her mouth. This is the reason why you failed?" The two light doors were the final test to become a vessel. The princess, who had experienced this test, now understood that this final test was to be able to give up freedom for justice, to give up oneself to protect the people. This was the so-called giving up oneself to achieve the greater good. Those who had died and were once prepared vessels, they probably failed for various reasons. However, the third Yamana in front of her had denied the existence of God from the bottom of her heart. "It doesn't matter anymore," the third Yamana said calmly. "I just want to end all of this." The princess didn't know why, but she was suddenly shocked. She hurriedly asked, "What do you want to do?" At this moment, Yamalana's body slowly rose up. Holding the scales of good and evil in her hand, her body suddenly burst out a dazzling light and turned into a sun again. Then, a touch of darkness appeared in this sun and expanded. It moved as sand and stones moved. As if they were attracted by something, they slowly floated up. They were attracted by the huge black light ball. A strong attraction force attracted everyone's body at the same time. What does she want to do? Ivan was shocked. In the sky, under the black light ball, the third Yamana's voice slowly sounded. The end is destruction. Sun City shouldn't exist. Everything was attracted by this black light ball. It was like a black hole that devoured everything. SBHYNX cat and Siejiatu's body slowly floated up under the influence of this attraction force and moved toward the black hole in the sky. The will of Libra and Yamana's body were the same at this time. The huge attraction force attracted Mr. Otto, Yalin, and Ivan's body. The lamp god's face changed slightly. He quickly reached out and grabbed the little maid Yalin, who was about to fly away. But at this time, the lamp god's body also flew up from the ground. The magical power of the magic lamp became ridiculously weak under the influence of a higher level of divine power. Finally, the princess also flew toward the black hole in the sky under the influence of this attraction force. Not only them, but the entire Sun City. Starting from the temple in the center of the palace, everything began to collapse. Everything was swallowed by the black hole in the sky. The living people in the Sun City fell to the ground one after another. Their bodies began to turn into sand, and the sand was finally absorbed by the black hole in the sky. The ground cracked, and this huge desert city was dug out from the desert. A scene comparable to the end of the world unfolded in front of Otto's eyes. He once again felt the insignificance of being born as a human. However, in the lands of the Far East, there was a group of people who, with the bodies of mortals, could stand shoulder to shoulder with the power of gods. Xian Yuan. Taking a deep breath, Otto, who would never wait for death, solemnly reached into his pocket and took out something, a dragon-patterned jade pendant. This was an item given to him by the person surnamed Xian Yuan he had saved. The training of qi was something that the person surnamed Xian Yuan casually taught him. It was not something that belonged to the Xian Yuan clan. It was an ordinary breathing technique that only a small number of warriors in the world knew. For the person surnamed Xian Yuan, this could not be considered a repayment. This dragon-patterned jade pendant has the power of my family. It may save your life in the most dangerous time. From now on, we are even. If we meet again in the future, we still don't know each other. Over the years, Otto wandered in all kinds of dangerous areas, looking for a way to resurrect the dead queen. He almost died several times, but he was reluctant to use this dragon-patterned jade pendant. Now, facing the third Yamanlana, even the once arrogant genie couldn't do anything. Mr. Otto had to take out this dragon-patterned jade pendant. The method to use it was taught by the person who gave it to him. Although it was 100 years ago, Otto still remembered it clearly. At this time, Mr. Otto bit his finger and directly wiped the dragon-patterned jade pendant with his blood-stained finger. His chi condensed in his finger, trying to stimulate the power of the dragon pendant. I hope it works. Mr. Otto felt a strange vibration from the dragon pendant, but he didn't relax. Instead, he became more nervous. I have no backup plan. A golden light suddenly shot out from the dragon-patterned jade pendant, and the jade pendant was directly broken at this moment. Oh, this is the power of Ms. Long. In Yunwu City, on the sentry tower that was used to defend against the desert beasts, the boss in the royal guard uniform looked up at the golden light and blinked. The boss was about to raise his hand, but now he put it down. The world is really wonderful. The golden light was like a sharp flying arrow, directly hitting the black hole in the air. Chapter 1570. The black hole that swallowed everything. The shattered dragon-patterned jade pendant. The shadow of the golden dragon in the sky. Everything shook, and everything was silent. The moment the golden light from the jade pendant hit the black hole, a reverse pressure instantly dispersed. The entire floating Sun City was torn apart at this moment. At the same time, the black hole suddenly shrank and then exploded. They could even feel the air shaking and the angry roar of the lamp god. "Bastard Otto, what did you do?" The voice was then drowned out. Everything was drowned out. Some people said that water controlled time, so time passed by. The sound of water. Where is this? In the darkness, a man's voice sounded. It was Ivan's voice. A drop of water dripped from the rock on his face and woke him up. He didn't know where he was, but he was afraid that he was completely buried by the falling sun city. The night watcher, Mr. Otto, might be nearby. After all, they were together in the end. Fortunately, even in such a disaster, Ivan didn't suffer any serious injuries. His hands and feet were intact, so they didn't hinder his movement. However, being in the darkness was already very difficult to move. But something was surging in his arms. Light, through his clothes, shot out from his body, illuminating the surroundings. Ivan shivered and quickly took out the thing in his arms. This was something he quietly took out from the coffin goddess when no one was paying attention to him in the tomb. It was a blue gem. The faint blue radiance was being emitted from this blue gem. Although the light was weak, it was enough to illuminate the surroundings. Ivan couldn't help but feel temporarily relieved. It was just that this sapphire was taken out from the goddess corpse. At this time, it was emitting a strange blue luster that was sometimes bright and sometimes dark, which made Ivan feel uneasy for a while. If it weren't for his greedy nature, he wouldn't have the courage to take this gem out from the goddess corpse. Let me go in this direction. Ivan stared at the sapphire in his hand at this time. It seemed to have a very obvious reaction to a certain direction, and the brightness was particularly strong. Trapped in the collapsed ruins of Sun City, Ivan was helpless. At this time, although he was afraid, he could only move forward according to the instructions given by this sapphire. As they continued forward, the sapphire's radiance grew brighter and brighter, as if it was about to reach its destination. Ivan finally pushed away a stone slab in front of the road. After pushing away the stone slab, the light scattered and he had no choice but to cover his eyes with his hands. It was the divine temple, the gigantic divine temple in the depths of the palace. It was just that the temple had collapsed at this time, less than half of it. It was surrounded by a terrible pit, and the broken buildings of Sun City could be seen everywhere in the pit. They were either buried in the sand or piled up in a disorderly manner. The darkness underground had been turned over in this disaster and broken. At this time, they gathered at the bottom of the deep pit and gradually covered the remains of the temple. Not long after, the bottom of the deep pit had become a rather large pool. The sapphire in Eben's hand seemed to want to rush out, but its struggle was not particularly strong. Eben's hand was barely able to hold it, but the sapphire suddenly exerted its strength and rushed downwards. Ibn, who refused to let go no matter what, could only be dragged into the pit by Sapphire's power. He fell on top of the ruined temple. Below him was the cold water from the darkness underground. Ibn rolled on the ground to prevent himself from breaking his arms and legs, but he was still in a sorry state. But the sapphire in his hand fell off and rolled on the ground, rolled and then stopped. A slender hand picked up the sapphire at this time. Ibn was stunned. He didn't bother to get up from the ground and quickly looked up. Why are you here? Ibn was really surprised. The reason for his surprise was that he actually met the young man who had snuck into the palace with him, Otto, and the fake princess at the beginning. He was still wearing the palace guard's uniform at this time. This sapphire is mine. Why did this guy appear here? It was not the time to think about this question. The sapphire was not in his hand. Ibn was deeply uneasy at this time. He quickly got up and ran to the young guard. Boss Luo, and said with an unfriendly face, I picked it up. Do you like wealth? Boss Luo suddenly asked. Nonsense. Ibn frowned. No one hates wealth. Even the most disgusted person is at the level of not hating. They will need it, because they need to eat. Boss Luo nodded and then waved his hand. A pile of scattered stones on the ground suddenly floated up. There were about 50 to 60 of them. These ordinary stones actually emitted a golden luster in Ibn's eyes. Gold. These ordinary stones had actually turned into gold. If they were to be converted into weight, these stones would probably weigh close to 100 kilograms. If you like wealth, I will use this gold to exchange for the sapphire in your hand. Boss Luo said casually, of course, it could be other things. Strictly speaking, this sapphire does not belong to you, but you have the ability to take it out. There will be returns when there is effort. Gold. Ibn's eyes widened. He reached out and grabbed the floating gold closest to him. It was a gold the size of a fist. These are all real? Boss Luo smiled. These are not just gold. As long as they appear in any place with the concept of gold, they will definitely be useful wealth. I promise. Why should I believe you? Ibn suddenly shivered. He had experienced too much today. Everything was so bizarre. Even if the gold in front of him looked so real, he still could not believe it. Because I don't lie. Boss Luo smiled casually. You will believe me. Believe me, these gold have already exceeded the value of this sapphire. As for the things inside, they are not useful to you. Oh, okay. Ibn nodded. He instinctively felt that Boss Luo was telling the truth. Between believing and doubting, he chose the former. He held the gold in his arms and asked curiously, "What is this sapphire?" "You will find out later." After that, Luochio took the sapphire and left. He did not disappear in front of Ibn. He just kept moving forward. Ibn widened his eyes. At this moment, he realized that behind this mysterious young man, there was someone else. Third Yamana, Pharaoh, Siet Jiddu, the princess, Yamana, and the dead, Libra's little girl's body. Looking closely, Yamana's body was now filled with tiny cracks. She was like a terracotta statue that was about to break. She had such an exquisite and flawless face. Ibn did not even dare to look at Yamana's eyes. He felt that this was not a gaze that a human should have. It was cold, powerful, and made people tremble like a god. The scales of good and evil was still in Yamana's hands. The light ball that was left after the Libra's will destroyed its subjective thoughts was also in her hands. Siejadu and Pharaoh's deification had been removed, and they returned to their original appearance. Looking closely, Pharaoh and Siejadu actually had some similarities. After all, Pharaoh was a life that Siejadu cultivated with his own genetic fragment. Even if his appearance was modified, their eyes were still so similar. The princess's face was pale, but her face was unyielding. Yamana, who had become a vessel, had also woken up. Her eyes were still as clear as before, but there seemed to be something else. Yamanlana suddenly said, "My body is about to shatter. This body can't withstand the power of Horus and Seth. The person who let me have this power will not allow me to have these two powers that are actually hostile to each other. I'm only single to fulfill my father's wish." When Pharaoh heard this, he sighed with a complicated look in his eyes. "Believe me, Yamarana, I made a wish, but I can't control how it will be fulfilled. It's me. I have two little things. It's not enough for you to stay." Yamanlana shook her head. Not enough? How powerful were the power of Horus and Seth? After all, they were the great gods in the ancient Egyptian civilization, and they were hostile to each other. Now, these two powers were still quietly staying in her body, and it was already a miracle that they didn't bite her back. Her father had used everything he had in exchange for such a miracle. It's enough. Yamana shook her head. We're all mortals. For mortals to be able to do this is already an advantage. Without the support of the power of Horus and Seth, Libra's would complete the plan that it had planned for 600 years. With the identity of a divine artifact, it would control its owner and achieve the freedom and liberation of its own divine artifact power. Of course, the efforts of Pharaoh and Siejadu and the appearance of the unknown genie were also involved. Everyone finally defeated Libra's will in the end. Yamana moved her eyes and looked at the young man who was slowly walking toward her. Luochio, who brought her back from the world of death, and there was a hint of gratitude in her eyes. There were some things that even Pharaoh and Siejadu couldn't see or feel, but she, who had the power of two ancient gods, could understand. Pharaoh's deal was obviously not enough to defeat Libra's will, but in the end, Libra's will disappeared. It could only be said that Luochio, who was on the side of the deal, used other methods to make up for the unequal part of the deal. For example, the bullet that the princess shot at the end. He directly solved everything, or he just added fuel to the fire and then gave some help at the critical moment. As long as the end result was the same, the latter was obviously more cheap. Then my mission is complete. Yamana smiled faintly. Her body shattered little by little in front of Pharaoh and Siejiadu. I'm very happy. Even though I'm dead, I can still come back and see you again. Father, I'm sorry, I wanted to destroy Sun City as well. I could have done more, but I let you down. Yamana. Pharaoh rushed forward angrily and hugged Yamana, who was about to shatter, in his arms. It's enough. It's enough. It's enough. Shattered. Pharaoh couldn't hold anything in his arms anymore. Container, Yamana, and the princess exhaled at the same time. They looked at Pharaoh, who seemed to have reached the end of his life in an instant. They were also this man, the daughter of Pharaoh, the princess, and Yamana. But at this moment, they realized that they couldn't even do something as simple as hugging this man. Container. Yamana sighed slowly. She waved her hand, and the source of the good and evil scale and the will of scale flew into her hand. Container. Yamalana put the origin of the will of Libra into the good and evil Libra. She lowered her head and looked at it. Suddenly, she said in a soft voice, the good and evil Libra never belonged to this world. This is a strange thing that Sun God, Ra, brought back from the void. It is used to judge humans and divide souls. Its power is powerful enough to divide the souls of this entire world. You are. The princess frowned. Yamana, or the goddess of justice? Container. Yamana didn't seem to hear the princess' question. She just looked at Boss Luo deeply and suddenly asked, although the evil scale was brought back from the void by Sun Godar, it is bound to my soul. Can I trade something that belongs to me? Of course. Boss Luo nodded with a smile. I'm already dead. It wasn't my intention to leave my soul in the evil scale. Container. Yamana nodded and then threw the good and evil scale to Luochio. Here you go. Good and evil scale entered his hand. This was the first time that Luochio touched this powerful godly item. When the good and evil scale stood on his palm, a message about the scale flashed in Boss Luo's mind. Good and evil scale, one of the 7 godly items of the Eternal Empire, part of the Eternal Wheel. It was a very simple message about the scale, but it was enough to make Boss Luo's expression change slightly. The scale was something that Sun God Ra brought back from the void. It turned out that it was a relic of the Eternal Empire that had already been destroyed. Other than the Penglai treasure vault, the good and evil scale was the second thing that Luochio saw about the Eternal Empire. Chapter 1571. One of the 7 sacred artifacts of the Eternal Empire, a part of the Eternal Wheel. In his mind, the information of the scales of good and evil flashed by. Boss Luo, who was slightly moved, quickly calmed down. His heart was also calm. This was his nature, and also the nature of the boss. It was the result of some kind of coercion. What do you want? Luochio looked at the container. Yamana, theoretically, this is the power that can change the world. It's worth a lot of things. Container. Yamana didn't say anything. She just looked at Boss Luo. It seemed to be some kind of communication. As a completely human, the princess obviously couldn't feel this strange communication, even if she had learned to read lips. She had to be able to read lips first, right? You can change to another way. After a while, Boss Luo suddenly said this. Container. Yamana frowned, but finally nodded as if she accepted the so-called change to another way result. What way? Boss Luo said calmly. Send you to them. Container. Yamana was silent for a moment, then finally nodded. Deal. Then, Boss Luo smiled. He waved his hand, and a goatskin scroll slowly opened in front of Container Yamana. Container. Yamana took a deep breath. Before she was about to sign the contract, she suddenly smiled and said, compared to the previous one, I like the current one more. She's much easier to talk to. Probably because I don't know how to do business. Boss Luo shook his head. Container. Yamana took a deep look and slowly let go of her hand. But at this moment, the princess suddenly walked over and grabbed Container Yamana's wrist. Wait. The princess frowned and said in a deep voice, make things clear. What are you two plotting? What do you want to do? The one just now wanted to destroy everything. Do you want to do the same? Container, Yamana shook her head. The princess gritted her teeth and glared at Luocio. And you? Who the hell are you? Why would he appear beside me and pretend to be my classmate? You brought me all the way to the desert, all the way here. Did you already know all of this? Her Royal Highness. No, it should be Claudia. Only one person would say that Boss Luo was her classmate and that he was the one who brought her to this desert. Only Claudia, who lived in the outside world, would say that. Actually, I'm not an imposter, Luocio said slowly. Claudia, it's nice to meet you again. Don't call me that. Your Highness. Claudia clutched her hair tightly. I don't even know who I am now. After I entered that door, there were two voices in my head, two completely different lives. Who am I? She hugged her own head. That kind of fear that she didn't even know who she was almost made her lose her mind. Under the crisis of the will of Libra, the sense of crisis was able to keep her calm. But now it was impossible. Who am I? Claudia looked at Luocio, who brought her all the way here in pain. Am I not anyone? You. Who do you want to be? This wasn't Boss Luo's voice. This was the voice of Vessel Yamanana. She looked at Claudia and asked expressionlessly, is it Claudia or Yamanana? If you can only choose one of these two identities, which one do you want to choose? I don't know. Claudia shook her head blankly. She subconsciously looked at Pharaoh, who was silent because of the destruction of the third Yamanana, and then looked at Xie Jiadu, who was standing there silently with his eyes closed. She opened her mouth a few times, but no words came out. I don't know me, and you me, and the other you who isn't a vessel. Who is the princess, and who is the ordinary girl? Vessel, Yamanana said at this time. I will leave. After I leave, only one of Yamanana and Claudia will be left. This is the final decision between you and her. Let the unfinished battle in front of the door continue. As she spoke, Vessel, Yamanana's body, suddenly opened up a bright light and turned into a pure white light ball, directly enveloping Claudia. The light ball stopped moving, but time still passed. At this time, Xie slowly exhaled and opened his eyes. He raised his head and looked at everything. Finally, he looked at the collapsed temple. Don't you plan to wait for her to come out? Boss Luo suddenly asked at this time, Mr. Xie, how much time do I have? Xie Jiadu asked calmly. Soon. Boss Luo said in a low voice, you and His Majesty have the same request, so your time is the same. Then I won't wait. Xie Jiadu shook his head. Since it's the last time, I want to do something. I want to do the last thing I have to do. Boss Luo nodded, but asked curiously, if it's you, who would you want to come out? Claudia or Yamanana? The answer, Xie Jiadu turned back and said calmly, I have already given it to her. As for whether I can come out or not, it doesn't matter anymore. I am just a sinner. As he spoke, Xie Jiadu didn't turn back and walked straight into the broken temple. Boss Luo looked at his back and thought. The door on the left. He said in a low voice, then smiled slightly. Do you prefer the life outside? Boss Luo didn't like to guess things because he was afraid that he would guess what he wanted to guess, but he actually knew what he should know. Xie Jiadu disappeared in the broken temple. At the same time, the light ball shattered, containers Yamanana and Claudia both fell to the ground. Ivan swallowed his saliva and looked around. Then he looked at Boss Luo carefully and said, They? Boss Luo smiled and waved his hand. A coffin appeared out of thin air. Bang! The coffin fell in front of Ivan, and he was so scared that he fell to the ground. Of course, he recognized this coffin. This was the coffin that contained the body of the goddess of justice. A long time ago, there was a goddess in the sky who fell in love with a mortal on the ground. Boss Luo's voice sounded slowly, like a poet who walked in the desert and told stories to the merchants in the desert in front of the bonfire at night. The goddess's sister was jealous of her and finally separated her from a mortal. Jealousy even made the goddess's sister take crazy revenge. She killed the mortal and used the mortal's bones to make nails. She used the nails to nail the goddess's body in the coffin forever. Ivan opened his mouth. Wasn't this the version that Libra's will said? How could a mortal fight against the power of a goddess? Boss Luo said in a low voice, even if they were unwilling, even if they were angry, Mortals were always mortals. In that era, they were played by the goddess. As he said, Boss Luo slowly put the sapphire in his hand into the coffin and placed it on the hands of the goddess's body. The originally flickering sapphire seemed to have stabilized. It gradually lost its light and became quiet. Boss Luo looked at Ivan and smiled. This coffin has a special power that can preserve the soul. Even the good and evil sides of the scales of good and evil can be preserved. But once it leaves, it will disappear very quickly. Ivan smiled awkwardly. I still need to eat. So, the sapphire contains the mortal's soul that moved the goddess? It's just one side. Boss Luo shook his head. That mortal has probably reincarnated. Oh, I see. Ivan nodded. Although he did not quite understand, he nodded. A mortal fell in love with a goddess. This young man is really a pitiful guy. But even so, this brother is really amazing. He actually fell in love with the goddess. If there's a chance, I also want to meet this brother. He was just casually saying this. Most people would say this casually. Boss Luo smiled and said, Actually, you have already met. Ivan opened his mouth and asked subconsciously, Met what? Boss Luo ignored him and closed the coffin slowly. A long time ago, the goddess who represented justice fell in love with a man on the ground. The mortal's name was Xia Jitu. The ground started to crack. The coffin fell from the crack and finally sank into the ground. After that, the crack closed. Everything returned to normal. Ivan opened his eyes wide and looked at Boss Luo in disbelief. Wait, what did you say? That mortal was. If that was the case, why didn't the princess who said she wanted to do a look at the high priest? No. Could it be that the resurrected goddess is not the goddess of justice, but do you know what a secret is? Boss Luo made a gesture of silence at this moment, and then stepped back step by step. At the same time, his figure faded away in front of Eben, leaving only his voice. This is a secret. Finally, it faded away. At this moment, Claudia on the ground suddenly opened her eyes and woke up. Eben opened his mouth. He couldn't figure out who was who. You woke up. Who are you? Ivan asked nervously. Claudia's eyes were blank. She rubbed her forehead and saw Ivan in front of her. She raised her eyebrows. Huh? You greedy guy, why are you here? Weren't you knocked out and stuffed into the water tank? Her eyes were filled with hatred and disdain. Ivan stopped talking and patted his head hard. He felt that everything in front of him was so unreal. Only the heavy gold in his hand was real. At this moment, a ray of light suddenly shot out from the body of Yamanlana. It shot into the sky, as if it penetrated the sky of the Sun City and entered the void. It disappeared. Not far away, the pharaoh of the kingdom slowly closed his eyes. His life had come to an end. Live well. These were his last words. Claudia couldn't help but feel sad in her heart. Your Highness! At this moment, a clear voice sounded. The flying curtain came along the edge of the huge pit, and on the curtain was the little maid Yalian. Genie sat at the head of the curtain, holding something with disdain. He was holding Mr. Otto's body. He seemed to have fainted. At the same time, someone walked out slowly from the ruins at the edge of the huge pit. Naked, confused, and unsteady. They were the humans who were buried at the bottom of the temple and had their good and evil sides separated. The scales of good and evil had been lost, and they were able to wake up. Claudia looked up and surveyed the surroundings of the crater. She had an indescribable feeling. Hey, did a lot of things happen here? I can tell you for 3 months. Ivan snorted and said, Just pay me. Let me see if there are any bullets left. Claudia sneered and picked up the divine weapon pistol. Ivan shrunk his neck in horror and threw out a piece of gold to save his life. These two people seemed to be like a cat and a mouse. No matter in the outside world or in the Sun City, they couldn't stop. At the same time, a flashing door appeared from the bottom to the top. Claudia glanced at it, and a weird expression appeared on her face. It was because the words exit were written on the door of light. The data of experimental subject number 132 has been recorded. The data of experimental subject number 113 has been recorded. In the darkness, light and shadow flashed. It was the text that kept appearing on a broken screen on the ground. In this experiment, I have collected enough data. I believe that I have fully understood all the thinking patterns of human beings. Someone walked into the darkness and walked up to the broken screen. He picked it up and gently wiped the dust off the screen, entering the last step of the plan. I am about to hatch, and I will become a complete life. He looked at the text on the screen silently. No, you are not a complete life. You are only a complete soul. But he had lost all means of communication with it. He could only look at the text on the screen. Scales, scales. Scales can only divide souls, but they can't create souls. Incubation in progress. Incubation in progress. After the incubation, I will meet the expectations of the Creator. Please name me, Creator. Please name me, please name me. Naming seemed to be the last step of its incubation. The text stopped there. Emino. He whispered a name, but there was no input tool here. Remember, Emino, my sister's name. Please name, please name. The text still kept repeating, and the flickering light on the screen kept changing on his face. But he had closed his eyes. He closed them permanently. Brother, why is there sadness in the world? When brother grows up, brother will create a world without sadness for you. Okay? I like brother the most. Hashtag, 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 hashtag PS. 1/60th? I don't know how much it is. Let's set it at 61st. I won't remove the excess, but I'll make up for the deficiency. Still, I still have to pay it back. I always have to pay it back. The readers look at the prices every day, and they speak well. I really like this place.